CD 7.
Chapter 27. Jilly put the kettle on when she disconnected from Helena. She felt the situation called for real coffee and freshly ground beans. Although it was still early days in her and William's relationship, she felt a bit guilty that they still hadn't told Daphne or any of their friends about it. Helena knew, of course, and she should probably tell Martin, although she felt certain that her son and Cressida would not be pleased. She would talk to William the next time he called, although mostly she let him do all the getting in touch. She was horribly old-fashioned. Now she sent him a text to say that Helena was coming for coffee, but that she probably wouldn't stay past 10 or 11. Helena, she realised, now kept builder's hours, which meant she started early. When Helena breezed through the back door a little later, Jilly's mother's heart soared with joy to see her daughter so happy. But a part of her was doubtful. She had had that madly in love glow herself when she had first been with her now ex-husband. "Oh, Mum," said Helena, "you've made real coffee. Are there B&B guests here?" Jilly laughed. "Do I only make coffee when I've got paying guests?" "Well, you know, but I'm not complaining. And shortbread. I've just had breakfast, but I'm still starving for some reason." "I can't imagine what that would be," muttered Jilly, smiling to herself. "So, how did World of Wool go? As successful as ever?" "Pretty much," said Helena, blowing crumbs. "Everyone loved my wall hangings. Not enough to actually buy them, of course. After all, at do's like that, people make their own wall art. But I'm going to run workshops showing how to make them, so they will have been worthwhile." "It was worth doing them then. After all, courses are the gift that goes on giving. You can only sell a wall hanging once." Jilly didn't join her daughter in eating the shortbread. She was a bit sick of it. "Defo. But, Mum, the best bit was when I came home." "Really?" Jilly was fairly confident that Helena wasn't going to give her a kiss-by-kiss account of her nocturnal exploits, but she was just slightly anxious. "You know I have to keep coming round here to have a proper bath." "Yes." "Well, Jago spent the whole weekend putting a proper tub into the bathroom that just had a shower in it. It was amazing. He cooked the most brilliant chicken tagine, and then he made me wait downstairs until the pinger went. Then I had to go upstairs, and he led me into the bathroom. He'd put candles everywhere and some gorgeous lavender bath oil, and it was lovely." "Darling, how thoughtful. You're absolutely sure he's not gay?" "Yes, but it meant he's now behind with his work, and he was so brilliant when I was working so hard, doing all the cooking and stuff. I'm determined to do the same for him." She paused and made a face. "But the trouble is, he's a brilliant cook and I'm not. I'm hoping you can give me some foolproof recipes." "Of course I can, and you can cook perfectly well. You just lack confidence." "I'll need a recipe for crumble, your cheese scones, soup, all the lovely comforting things that you make." "Those are the things that I don't really have recipes for, but I'll do my best." "I've never seen you like this, Helly." "I know. I've never been like this before. Being in love is just so blissful, isn't it?" Jilly sighed. "Yes, it is. The trouble is, you can't just decide to feel like that. Some people seem able to fall in love all the time. I'm not like that." She realised she had never loved Leo. She had just been flattered by his attention and had enjoyed all her friends envying her. "I don't think I am either," said Helena, "or it would have happened before now." Jilly nodded. "Are you in love now, Mum?" asked Helena. Jilly nodded again. "Yes, I think I am." Helena came round the table and hugged her mother. "Long may it last," she said. "Indeed," said Jilly, wondering if she would ever stop worrying about her children. She couldn't bear to see Helena's heart broken now. "Thank goodness you're back," said Helena when Jago came into the house later that evening, ridiculously pleased to see him again. "Why? What's wrong?" He looked worried. She laughed. "Nothing really. Supper's ready when you are." She had come home from her mother's laden with supplies, including a stew from Jilly's freezer, currently bubbling away, a box of broken shortbread, some frozen rhubarb, not turned into a crumble, recipes and a big bundle of herbs from the garden, When she'd done most of her paperwork required to follow up after World of Wool, emailed several people about workshops, tidied the house, and put some tools in a more sensible place, she set about finding somewhere nice for the double date that was in prospect. She had found a lovely wine bar, not too far away, with good reviews and parking, then ran it past Amy. This instigated a phone call that went on for some time, but at least they had agreed a couple of possible dates, and when they finally disconnected, Helena felt she could text James with the dates and venue details. And all the time she worked, she thought about Jago. Now he kissed her fondly and lingeringly. "I'll just grab a quick shower first, then I'll be down." The following Sunday evening, they were in Helena's car. Jago was driving. They'd toss for it. "I'm quite nervous," said Helena, as she fiddled with Google Maps on her phone, although they knew the way. Jago glanced at her. "Why?" "Because James may not like me." "I like you. Isn't that enough?" Suddenly, it wasn't. She needed him to tell her he loved her. He'd certainly shown her this was the case. But now she needed the words. She wouldn't ask, though. "You know how it is. Your best friend. I'd have been miserable if Amy didn't like you, and I was desperately upset when I thought my mother was getting together with Leo." "A mother is different, though." "Of course. I did wonder if I'd never want her to have a man in her life, but I'm fine about William. I mean, it took a bit of getting used to, and a lot of blanking out about what they do that isn't just having dinner or whatever. But basically, I just want her to be happy." "I'm sure James just wants me to be happy. And I am," he said. As they'd reached a set of traffic lights just then, he took the opportunity to kiss her. Helena was glad Jago was driving. A glass or two of Prosecco would make the whole date a lot easier, at least in the beginning. If James didn't like her, Jago would be torn between his girlfriend and his old friend forever. As for her liking James, she'd made up her mind to. A lot of things were a matter of choice, she realised, even those that didn't appear to be. As arranged, Helena and Jago arrived first. James appeared minutes later. Amy was due half an hour after that. "Hey, mate," said Jago as he and James hugged each other. "So, this is Helena," said James. He hugged her too, and she took it as a good sign. While Jago went to the bar, Helena and James inspected each other. She was a bit more intense with her inspection than he was. For her part, she liked his curly fair hair, very blue eyes, and intelligent expression, and thought Amy would too. He wasn't as tall as Jago, and in Helena's opinion, not as attractive, but he was quite good-looking enough, she felt. When they'd finished studying each other, she smiled and he smiled back. "So, you're a weaver," he said. "Yes, but Amy and I do a lot of workshops together, which are more lucrative than selling the things, really. I hope you're not anti-weaver generally." He laughed as he was supposed to. "Certainly not. So far, I've never met a weaver I haven't liked." He paused. "Of course, you are the first weaver I've met." She smiled. "Amy is also a weaver." "Well, let's hope she fits the pattern." "I don't know if there's a pattern, but she's bright and fun." She paused. "Jago says she's jolly." "You don't agree with him?" "Oh, I do. She and I have a lot of fun, but I'm not sure it's a flattering description." "I'll let you know if I think she's jolly." He winked. Helena decided she liked James. He was definitely jolly. As the evening was going so well, they decided to stay and eat. Amy and James seemed to hit it off, and, Amy had confided, she fancied James really quite a lot. But while they were sharing a selection of puddings, Jago frowned and got out his phone. "Sorry," he said, having looked down at it. "I'll have to take this." Something in the way that he left the table made everyone else a bit less cheerful. "I hope it's not something dreadfully wrong with one of his properties," said Helena. "We may need to leave at once to put buckets under burst pipes." "Well, if you have to go, maybe me and Amy can stay on for a bit. Would you be up for that, Amy?" James asked. "I should think that would be all right," said Amy. She sounded fairly relaxed about it, but Helena guessed she was delighted by his suggestion. Jago came back. "We're going to have to go, I'm afraid," he said. Burst pipes, said Amy.
No, why should it be burst pipes?
Jago seemed confused. Helena got down from her stool. We were just speculating about what your phone call was. I guessed a plumbing crisis at one of your rental properties.
If only,
he said. He pulled some notes out of his wallet and put them on the table.
Let me know if that's not enough. And don't go crazy, kids.
He gave a cheery smile, but Helena could tell it wasn't sincere. He was obviously very worried. He didn't volunteer any information after they set off for home, and eventually she had to ask, I don't want to be nosy, but can you tell me what the phone call was about, or is it confidential? He sighed.
I do have a business problem, I'm afraid, which means I'll have to be away for a while, and I'm not sure how long.
Oh. This was a shock, but she didn't want to appear clingy by letting him see how much of a shock. But we'll be able to keep in touch with each other? He shook his head and looked straight ahead through the windscreen.
I'm afraid not. There's no phone signal where I'm going, or any Wi-Fi.
But what about your properties here? Will you need me to do anything for you?
Sweet of you to offer.
He gave her a warm smile and patted her knee.
I'll sort things out before I go.
He was silent for a few moments.
Will you be okay on your own in the house? It could feel a bit spooky with it being unfinished and everything.
Helena didn't know if she'd be all right or not. She hadn't minded living on her own in her little studio. But he was right. The house was a bit spooky, being big and half a building site. I might ask Amy to come and stay if you wouldn't mind.
Of course not. She could have your old room. She's fun, isn't she? I think she and James will enjoy each other's company, even if they don't get together forever.
Helena sensed he'd rather talk about Amy and James and his own situation. Could you tell if he liked Amy? And you know what I mean when I say liked. He chuckled.
I think he did. She's sparky and fun, and she'll take his mind off his lost love.
As long as his lost love doesn't come between them. Jago was thoughtful.
I don't think she will. She wasn't all that great, to be honest. Although she thought she was, and James did too. Amy is a far better bet, relationship-wise.
Helena laughed. Glad she's been promoted from being a jolly girl.
You took that all wrong.
They argued about it cheerfully for the rest of the journey home. In the morning he left, early, before Helena was properly awake. She tried to go back to sleep but couldn't, and found tears slipping out of the corners of her eyes as she listened to the birds and saw the room get lighter. In theory, she had no reason to cry. Jago had been called away on business and had gone. It was no big deal. But somehow, it felt like a big deal, as if something had changed, not necessarily between them, but with him. Chapter 28. There was always plenty to do in the house, and Helena's building skills had come on a lot since living with Jago. She was best at pointing, but she also tidied up a few half-finished sections of bricklaying. But when she could do no more, and it was no longer silly o'clock, she went round to see her mother. "Hello, darling," said Jilly, without looking up from writing something. It looked like a list. "What's wrong?" "Mum, how do you know anything's wrong? I've just arrived." "I'm your mother. Don't query the process." Now Jilly did look up. "So?" "There's nothing wrong." "Well, not really." Helena pulled out a chair and sat at the kitchen table, putting her arms on it. "Jago's gone away, that's all. I'm going to miss him." "Oh, sweetheart, I'm sorry. That's horrible. How long is he away for?" "I don't know." "But you can keep in touch with him, FaceTime, see how he is?" "No, he said he'd be out of contact." "That is a bit harder to cope with, love. But you didn't leave on bad terms or anything?" "Oh, no." Although this was the first time he'd got up without making love to her, but she didn't need to share that with her mother. "No, we're fine, but I'm a bit worried about him. He got this phone call while we were out with James and Amy last night, and we had to leave the wine bar right away so he could make arrangements. Then he went really early this morning." If you want to come home for a bit, do, said Jilly firmly. Whatever your old mother is getting up to doesn't stop this being your home, first and foremost. Her mother's invitation instantly made Helena feel better. She didn't want to move back home, but knowing she could made the prospect of being alone in Jago's house seem less daunting. That's really kind of you, Mum, but I think I'll be fine. I'm a big girl now, after all. You'll always be my baby darling, said Jilly, smiling fondly. Now, I've planned to make some soup. Do you want to stay and help me chop up vegetables? Oh, yes, that would be fun. They made soup and chocolate cake, and by the time Helena left with a cake in a tin, she felt a lot better. She was further encouraged by Amy's eagerness to come and stay. In theory, it was to plan weaving workshops, but Helena knew the signs. Amy wanted to talk about James. To be fair to them, they did plan a couple, and Amy was also keen to help Helena with her workshops to create wall hangings. They discussed sourcing fleece, dyeing it themselves or buying it already dyed, and various other work-related subjects, before Helena said, "Shall we order pizza and open a bottle of wine?" "Thought you'd never ask," said Amy, "but let's make pizzas in the frying pan. Cheaper. I've got wine already and cake for pudding." So, how did it go with James after we left? "He is so lovely," said Amy. "Obviously, it's far too early to say for sure, but he sent me a text this morning saying how much he'd enjoyed meeting me." "Really? That soon? That's amazing." "I know. So unlike a man. He's very keen that we should meet up again, though. No date made yet, but hey, and he is so nice." Amy went on to tell Helena every little thing she knew about James. Not, Helena realised, because Amy thought she needed to know all that, but because she wanted to talk about him. She was attracted to him and had mentionitis. Still, it was all good stuff and useful to know. He was Jago's best friend. Suddenly Amy said, "I know, let's check him out on Facebook." "You don't expect me to believe you haven't already done that, do you?" Helena had found a mixing bowl and a packet of flour. Amy would make the pizzas. "Well, no, but he may have put something about me up there." Helena couldn't help laughing. "Really? What would he say?" "I've met a gorgeous new woman. Really hope she's as into me as I'm into her." "Ovs?" "Honey, there's pinging off a text to someone you've just met, and there's turning that someone into a girlfriend." "I know, there is a bit of time in between, but I haven't felt like this for so long. Let me enjoy it." "I'm really not raining on your parade," said Helena gently. "I'm just managing your expectations." Amy was rueful. Okay, I know. But let's get these pizzas on, and then we'll have a peek. I want to check out how he looks in swimming trunks." There was a good array of photos, and, to Amy's delight, a couple of James on a beach. There was one of him in skiing gear, holding some kind of trophy, standing in front of a row of laughing friends. Helena, crunching pizza, looked over Amy's shoulder. "Hang on," she said. "That's Jago." "Where?" "In the background. Look." Amy peered at the group of young men standing behind James. "Which one?" "There. Look." Helena touched the screen with her finger. "Helly, he's wearing a big hairband, ski goggles, and is looking away from the camera. How on earth can you tell?" "Well, I just know. It's him. I know it is." "You and your spooky super recogniser stuff." Amy was dismissive but indulgent. Now it was her man in the photos, Helena was a bit more interested. "That's weird. He's tagged wrongly. You'd think James would get his best mate's name right. It might not be him, and anyway, he may not have put the photo up there." "But it is him, and apparently he's called Jonathan Relto." Something stirred in Helena's memory. Wasn't Relto the name of that company that was responsible for all those people nearly dying in a fire? There was a dramatic rescue and several firemen got medals for gallantry. "No idea," said Amy. "Let's Google him." Helena's legs turned to rubber. She felt as if all her life force was escaping out of her body as she read. There were many more pictures of Jago available, ones that even Amy had no problem in recognising. Only he wasn't Jago, the man she loved. He was Jonathan Relto, nephew of one of the worst landlords in history. His uncle had only missed going to prison because of a very clever lawyer. Worst of all, Jago had worked for him. She developed a cold sweat and her mouth went so dry she couldn't speak. "Oh, Helly," said Amy, looking at her friend with concern. "Would you like some water?" Helena nodded. While Amy went to fetch her some, she tried to get her brain to work. Amy came back with water. She sipped some and managed to speak. "I don't know what to do." "Is there any brandy in the house?" asked Amy. "You're not supposed to give brandy for shock. It gives you hypothermia or something." "Don't be ridiculous." Amy was dismissive of this namby-pamby response. "I'll find the brandy. It'll make you feel a bit more in control." Helena remembered the first time Jago had offered her brandy, after she had rescued the kitten. That time she had asked for tea instead, but this required something stronger. Amy had obviously managed to find it and held out a glass to her. Helena took it and sipped, and as she felt the strong liquor reach her bloodstream, she realised that Amy was right. Her limbs did feel more connected to her body. "I feel as if I've been run over by a train," she said. "It must be awful. I'm so sorry," said Amy. "Jago, the man I thought I loved, is not who he said he was. He's this other, horrible person, very nearly responsible for people dying." "They didn't die, though, and you don't know how much he had to do with it. He may have worked for the company, but he could have been a caretaker or something." Amy sounded as if she was desperate to say something comforting, but couldn't think of anything sensible. "If he was responsible, he'd have gone to jail, and his uncle avoided that," she added. "Oh, come on. As if. Besides, he's lied to me. I can't forgive him. I'm leaving here." She paused and looked at her glass. "Tomorrow. I'm over the limit now." "You were over the limit a few glasses of Prosecco ago," said Amy. "And don't overreact. Jago didn't lie to you. He just didn't tell you everything." "That's as good as lying, isn't it?" "Not really. I know you're living together, but you haven't known him that long. It wouldn't be an easy thing to bring up. By the way, my uncle's company was responsible for that awful fire when people nearly died years ago." "When would he have told me? Soon? Never?" Helena still felt horribly deceived. "I don't know, Hells, but you can't think badly of him because he didn't blurt it out when you first met. Have you told him everything about you?" "I may have kept quiet about some unfortunate music preferences when I was 12, but mostly, yes. He knows all about my parents' divorce and how it affected me. He knows everything remotely important." Amy put her hand on Helena's arm. "It needn't be a deal-breaker, Hel." Helena shook her head, still in despair. "We haven't actually made any sort of deal. I just moved in as a lodger and then changed bedrooms. I feel such a fool. I feel I've shacked up with a complete stranger. I just fell in love and followed my heart and my lust." "I think you are overreacting." "Amy, you saw what was on Google. I'm not saying the fire wasn't awful, not for a second. But just because it was Jago's, or Jonathan's, uncle's firm, it doesn't mean he had anything to do with it." "Then why change his identity? Is that what normal, innocent people do?" "Well, maybe. Maybe having that name meant he couldn't get work or start a business or anything." "I don't know, Ames. I just don't know. I just feel terribly let down." "But he's been lovely to you." "But who has been lovely to me? And why? Is it Jago or Jonathan?" "He won't have a hidden agenda. What has he got to gain from being nice to you?" "He has a hidden past. Why not a hidden agenda? I just feel I'm in the middle of a bog, and everywhere I put my foot, it just sinks in. I have to get away." "You're not being logical," said Amy. "Well, sorry," said Helena. "The man I've been living with, the man I thought I loved, has turned out to be someone completely different. Sorry I can't react in a calm and reasoned way." Amy was getting fed up. "Okay, I'm going to make tea and toast. We're going to eat it and then go to bed. I promise you this will look better in the morning. You sound just like my mum. I take that as a compliment. Your mum talks a lot of good sense. I'll sort out some sheets for your bed, said Helena. If I think of this as a sleepover, maybe I won't feel so utterly miserable. After a drawn-out breakfast, Amy had persuaded Helena not to do anything rash until she had talked to Jago. He's entitled to give his side of the story, she said. You've just seen a lot of stuff on the internet. We all know you can't trust everything you see on there. I do get that, said Helena, although she was still reluctant to accept it. But how do I speak to him when I don't know where he is and can't contact him? I don't know how long he's going to be away for, and frankly, I can't cope with waiting for him to get home. Hi, Jago, or should I say Jonathan? No, I get that too. I think you have to find him. But I don't know where he is. I bet James does, said Amy. They go back years, and they're best friends. Ask him. I hardly know him. Do you want to find out where Jago is or not? Helena made a face. I do, but I'm also really nervous. Supposing I find out he's an insurance swindling arsonist or whatever. Maybe I'm better off not knowing. No, you're not. You can't spend the rest of your life wondering if you let the best man you're likely to meet go because of stuff you saw on Google, without ever giving him a chance to put his point of view. Helena knew Amy was right. She didn't want her to be right, but she was. I've just thought of something. What? James might not believe me about the picture on Facebook. You know, me being a super recognizer. I'll need proof I've seen him. You don't need to tell him how you came to find out Jago's changed identity. Just ask him where he is. Right. Amy looked at her phone to check the time. I've got to see someone about a workshop. I can leave you my computer with my Facebook page open. I'll be back at 3 to fetch it and find out how you've got on. Is that okay? Yes, that will be brilliant. Okay, I'll get in touch with James. Helena didn't move. Do you want me to do it for you? Helena shook her head. It's a kind offer, but I think I need to do this when I'm on my own. But you will do it? Promise? Absolutely promise. Fair enough, but tell me everything as soon as you can. Call me. I will. Are you going to tell your mum about this? Helena shook her head. Not until it's resolved. There's no point in worrying her. Amy nodded. Get on the phone then. I'm going to text. After you've gone, like I said. I'll just clear breakfast. Amy seemed reluctant to leave. No need. I'll do it. Now please go before I lose my nerve. If you're sure. Absolutely. But thank you so much for keeping me from overreacting. I might overreact again later, but just for now, thank you. They hugged, and then Amy left, and Helena went to find her phone. She sent a text, grateful that because of Amy wanting to meet James, she had his mobile number in her phone. I've seen Jago's details on Facebook. Can we meet up soon? After she'd sent the text, she worried that James would think she was trying to pick him up the moment Jago's back was turned. But she realised this was paranoia. But she felt paranoid. It was like a waking dream. She didn't know what was real and what wasn't. As she cleared the breakfast in Jago's patchwork kitchen, she had to stop herself crying. She had to stop assuming that she was destined to pack up her things, including 2 looms, and leave. Where would she go? She, personally, could go to her mother, but her looms? Where would there be space for them? Luckily for her sanity, James got back to her soon. This would be better face to face. Could I come to yours at lunchtime? Sure, she texted back. I'll make you a sandwich. Then she wished she hadn't said that. Jago was the sandwich expert, not her. Making one would just make her think about him. But then she realised that he had been the default setting for her brain for some time. And even thinking that she had been cheated on in the most complicated way didn't stop her loving him. Her heart would have to catch up with her head. And it might take a while. Helena was waiting at the door for James when he arrived.
"Hi, Helena,"
he said as he got out of the car. He kissed her cheek.
"Did you really make a sandwich?"
"Yes, but of course it won't be as good as Jago's." Then she found herself near tears again and wished she hadn't mentioned him. Although considering the reasons she and James were meeting, it wouldn't be possible not to. Soon they were sitting at the table in the kitchen.
"So," said James, "how did you find out about Jago?"
Me and Amy, were looking at Facebook. At you, actually, and his picture came up.
"But there are no pictures of Jago on Facebook. Not on my page, anyway."
He seemed so certain about this, Helena was very glad she'd anticipated the problem. She opened Amy's laptop and found the picture. James stared at it.
"OK, I remember the photo being taken, but where is Jago?"
"There," said Helena, pointing. James frowned.
"I know it's him, but how the hell do you know?"
"Have a gift. Curse a lot of the time, which means I can recognise people in a way other people can't. It's weird, I can't explain it."
"But he's wearing skiing gear. He's not even looking at the camera."
"Are you saying it's not him?" James's indignation subsided.
"No, it's him. But how anyone could recognise him?"
"Well, I have, and he's tagged with a completely different name. Maybe you could explain that." James chewed his sandwich with agonising slowness.
"It's not my story to tell."
"But I can't live with all this stuff I've read about him on the internet and not find out more."
"He should tell you about it, not me."
"Of course he should." Amy had gone on about this long enough for Helena to be convinced.
"But I don't know where he is. I can't get in touch with him."
She took a breath.
"Do you know where he is?"
James nodded.
"I do. And I'll tell you."
Chapter 29. Helena and James were looking at maps to find out exactly where the address Jago had given James actually was.
"The trouble is," said James, "postcodes in these remote areas are enormous, so they don't help much."
"I don't know the Wye Valley at all," said Helena.
"It's very beautiful, I know that."
"But if he didn't do anything wrong, I'm assuming he didn't do anything wrong." Helena broke off, hoping James didn't feel trapped into saying what she wanted to hear.
"Look, I've said it's not my tale to tell. I'm the only person he stayed friends with from those days. We knew each other at school. Let's just say I'm not surprised he wanted to cut himself off from everyone else."
"And you didn't want to cut yourself off from him?"
"Nope. He's a good guy."
A modicum of relief relaxed Helena's shoulders a little. "Well, that's something at least."
"He'd probably kill me if he knew I'd said that,"
said James, frowning as he studied maps on Amy's computer. "Why? Why would he mind you saying he was a good guy?"
"Because he doesn't feel like a good guy."
James took his fingers off the keys.
"Helena, I need a proper map. Sat-nav and all that are okay as far as they go, but they don't give you a chance to plan or see where you're headed."
"My mother would have one."
"Could you borrow it?"
"I'm sure I can."
"Would she ask why you wanted it? Where you're going?"
Helena nodded. "I hadn't planned to tell her until it was all over. She's a bit of a worrier. But I will have to tell her if I need a map book."
"You might be away for a few days, too."
"I hadn't thought of that," said Helena, "but I suppose that's true."
"If you started really early tomorrow morning, didn't get lost, and you and Jago had your conversation really quickly, you could get back in a day. But honestly, I think you guys need time to talk this through properly."
Helena nodded. "I'll have to tell Mum then." She looked at James. "Do you know why he rushed off so suddenly? Was it his past coming back to haunt him, as they say?"
"I really can't say. I promised I wouldn't."
Helena sighed. "Okay, I'll see if my mother is around." Helena called her mother and discovered she was out, but able to answer her mobile.
"Darling,"
said Jilly, sounding happy.
"Why don't I come and see you? I'd love to see where you and Jago live."
"Oh, Mum, I need to borrow something and tell you something. When will you be home? Helena wanted to cry all over again and hoped she'd get through the process of putting her mother in the picture without actually sobbing. Oh, okay. Well, I'll be back in an hour. Everything all right? Not really, but I'll explain when I see you. Now I must call Amy. She left her laptop here this morning and she'll probably need it. Having brushed off her mother with a kind of lie that happened to be true, Helena did call Amy. So, I'm going round to Mum's in a minute to borrow her map book, and then tomorrow, bright and early, I'm going on a road trip. It sounds fun in a way. I mean, finding your way to a hidden location and reuniting yourself with your lover? If that's what it was, I'd agree with you. It's a mission anyway. Although it's Wales, the Wye Valley, so not miles and miles away. Actually, that's what I thought, but James put it into my head that it might not be easy to find. Hence the physical map, so I can see all the little tiny roads. I'm not going until tomorrow anyway. And you'll be okay on your own? Of course. Helena sounded brighter than she felt. Jilly put a meringue on Helena's plate. You can tell I bought these. I just felt I wanted you to eat something. Did you buy them before or after I called you Mum? Asked Helena, recognising her mother's compulsion to feed her family if she was worried about them. Not the point. Just have a bit of sugar. I know, it's poison. A sip of tea, and then tell me everything you think I need to know. You'll have guessed it's about Jago. She sighed. Her mother nodded and broke off a bit of her own meringue with her fork. And my wretched super recogniser thing comes into it. Jilly looked up, anxiety making her frown. Did you see him on a rerun of Crime Watch? Helena found herself laughing, not sure if her mother had been deliberately funny or was just being naive. I wish. No, I found him on Facebook. And that's bad? Yes, when he's got a completely different name. He's not who he says he is, Mum. He's a different person with a different name. People are allowed to change their names if they want to, said Jilly. Yes, and he had good reason, but I feel like he's lied to me. She had been going to give Jilly a carefully edited version of what she'd discovered, but found herself wanting to tell her mother everything. His real name is Jonathan Relto, and his uncle owned the company that was responsible for all those people nearly dying in that fire. Do you remember? All those firefighters got awards for bravery, rescuing them. Let me show you. Soon they were both peering at the screen of Jilly's computer. It does look bad, I know, said Jilly, but my instinct tells me he's a good man. You thought he was gay. I rest my case, said Jilly primly, and then laughed. I know it must be a horrible shock for you, and you're quite right to try to find out the facts as soon as you can, but I'm putting my money on Jago being one of the good guys. Oh, God. I hope you're right, Mum. Helena didn't go back to Jago's house that night. She stayed with her mother and allowed herself to be mothered. Comfort food, wine, a bath, girly telly. It didn't cure her from doubt and a sense of being enormously let down, but it did cushion her from it a little. And in the morning, although she should have gone to her own home to pack a case, she preferred to manage with some clothes she'd left at Fairacres for years and things she could borrow from her mother. This included a slightly moth-eaten cashmere cardigan, a long cotton nightie, which she'd borrowed the night before, and a few pairs of her mother's knickers, which was a bit weird. Jilly had provided a new toothbrush and a small pot of moisturiser, along with a new mascara and a stub of kohl pencil. It was pouring with rain. Well, the saying is, rain before 7, fine before 11, said Jilly, as she and Helena looked at the rain-drenched sky. It's 7:30, Mum, and I do hope to get there before 11. I meant it'll be nice when you get there. Jilly sounded feeble, and Helena knew she was struggling to be optimistic. It'll be fine, said Helena, and made a dash for the car. Her raincoat held over her head. Jilly followed her, apparently trying to disguise her reluctance to let her daughter drive off into a storm to an unknown destination. Helena knew exactly how she felt. I'll be okay, Mum, she said, when she was sitting in her car, Google Maps on her phone,
the map open on the seat beside her, and a list of places to aim for on the dashboard. She also had a packet of sandwiches and a tin of shortbread.
"I know you will,"
said Jilly, sounding very confident but not fooling her daughter.
"And I know it might be difficult to keep in touch, but if you can, do. You've got your phone charger?"
"Yes, it's plugged in right now. Google Maps eats battery."
"Off you go then."
Jilly stepped back from the car and started to wave. The weather was completely in tune with Helena's mood. It was dreary, persistently grey, and visibility was affected. She didn't really know what she was going to find when she reached Jago, if indeed she did reach him. Would he be pleased to see her? Probably not, or he'd have asked her to go with him. Still, she had to find out his side of the story. If he was as bad as the internet made him out to be, she had a fallback position. She would go to the little cottage she and Amy always rented for World of Wool and hope it was available. It was midweek and in a less touristy part of Wales, so she was in with a chance. Then she'd have to start putting her life back together. She switched on the radio for any traffic news and for cheering music and discovered that the Severn Bridge was closed. This didn't make it impossible to get where she was aiming, but it did make it more complicated. She pulled in and had a good look at the map book and Google Maps. The bridge being closed would make her journey a bit longer. Then she set off again. The weather got worse as Helena drove, and while she was on the motorway, the sound of the rain on the roof was deafening, relieved only by the brief spells spent driving under bridges. She slowed right down, wishing her fellow drivers would do the same. Following the directions on her phone, she turned off the motorway and started climbing into the Welsh hills. The rain seemed to come down harder, and in places the road turned into shallow streams. Still, her road led her upwards, which surely was a good thing. Her phone lost signal at the same time as Helena came across a road closed sign. As water was pouring down the road in question, this didn't seem unreasonable. She pulled into the side and got out the map again. She set off when she had found herself an alternative route, hoping her phone would pick up another signal. When she had a second to glance at the scenery, she saw that it was very beautiful, but the road was getting narrow, steep and winding. Cow parsley lined both sides, and the verges seemed full of wild flowers. At another time, she would have either stopped and walked a little to identify the flowers, or driven slowly and just admired the beauty. But today, she was on a mission. Her optimism with regard to the success of that mission was waning, being washed away by the rain. She thought she was nearly at her destination when she came across another sign. This one said road ahead closed. It did not specify how far ahead, and this was important because nearly at the end of the road there was a little turn-off which was the one she wanted. There was no water running down this road, or at least not an unreasonable amount. Should she risk having to turn back, or search for another way now? The map was not encouraging. She'd have to turn round and start again, more or less, and who knew how many more roads would be closed by now? She decided to risk it and take the road that might close before she reached her turn-off. The rain started to ease, and eventually Helena realised it had stopped and that the sun was appearing through the clouds. Mist gathered about her, touched with gold. Her hope that the road wouldn't close before her turning increased as a car came towards her, but then it got narrower, becoming single track with passing places. She reckoned she had about half a mile to go before her turn-off, when she went around a corner and found that the road was blocked. She pulled her car off the road and got out. She stretched, undid her plait, shook out her hair and considered her surroundings. It was blissfully quiet. The only things she could hear were birds singing and somewhere out of sight the sound of running water. Just for a bit, she allowed herself to rest, and then she considered. She could turn round and go back, there was room, or she could abandon the car and walk. She looked at her phone. No signal. So she got out the map and tried to work out roughly where she was in relation to her destination. There was no quick solution. She just had to walk the next bit and hope it didn't become impassable. What was really worrying her was getting away quickly if Jago didn't want to see her. She didn't fancy running. It would look desperate.
she put her water and sandwiches into her rucksack, but left the rest of the food that Jilly had pressed on her. Then she put the map on top, just in case. She locked the car and set off up the road, past the barriers. If she hadn't been fretting about what her reception might be, or worried that she might get lost, she'd have enjoyed the walk. The world had a newly washed feel to it after all the rain, and although it was muddy, she was wearing sturdy trainers which were coping okay. The scenery seemed to get lovelier with every step, but the road got steeper and it seemed to take a long time before she reached the turn-off she was aiming for. She had bundled her hair on top of her head to keep it off her neck, but there was still sweat running down her spine, and the minimal amount of makeup she had put on that morning had long gone. She had a drink and then set off again, acutely conscious of how far she'd have to walk back if she'd made a mistake. A mistake in her direction, or a mistake in coming at all. The road trailed through fields and small woods and the occasional cluster of farm buildings. It was lovely, but it was long, and Helena's confidence wavered. Should she turn back now? She'd been going for nearly an hour. Say half an hour back to the car. It would be quicker going downhill, but it would still be at least 2 hours to get back to her mother's house, probably 3 or 4. Then she heard a lark singing in one of the nearby fields. The sound of it soaring up and up and up filled her with hope. She would go on until she reached the address James had given her. She would face this dilemma, head on. She was seriously sweating, out of breath and tired, when she finally looked up and saw a small cottage further up the lane. She knew it was the right one because it had Jago's pickup parked outside it. She was here. She had arrived. Now all she had to do was walk up to the front door and knock. But at that moment, she would have preferred to walk over broken glass. She decided to have a drink of water and then use a bit of it to wash her face. She went behind a tree, out of sight of the house, so she could prepare herself in private. When she was as clean as she could be, given the small amount of water she had, she ate a sandwich. She chewed slowly to avoid indigestion, reluctant to admit to herself that she was killing time, too scared to actually confront Jago now she was here. She slid down so she was squatting, wishing the ground wasn't so wet and she could sit, and rested under the tree for a while. Then her legs began to cramp and she straightened up again. She spent a few minutes shaking out her hair, very damp round her neckline, and retying the scarf holding it back. She was just wondering what more she could do to use up time to put off the inevitable, when she heard a voice. "Are you going to stay there all day? Or are you going to come in?" "I suggest you come in. It's going to rain again." It was Jago. Chapter 30. "You managed to find me then?" Jago said. "Were you hiding?" "No. You'd better come in and meet Fred. I'll make a cup of tea." His words were hospitable, but his manner wasn't. But as she didn't have a choice, Helena walked up the path to the house and followed him to the threshold of the back door. There she stopped and started unlacing her trainers, which were caked with mud. "Don't worry about that," Jago began, and then saw just how dirty her shoes were. "Okay, take them off. I'll find you a pair of clean socks to wear on top of yours." "My socks are soaking," she said, peeling one off. "Thick socks then." Helena removed the rest of her footwear and leaned against the door jamb, taking in the view. A series of valleys, small woods and fields lay like a bumpy quilt before her, leading down to a thread of silver that was the river. The sun coming out after the rain caused mist to drift across the landscape like skeins of carded wool. She couldn't help planning a wall hanging inspired by the spectacular scene, or maybe an actual quilt that could go on a bed or sofa. She was summoned back to the present by Jago's. "Here." He was holding 2 pairs of socks, one pair of them extra thick, designed to go inside climbing boots or wellies. It took a few moments to get the thinner pair on over her damp feet, but when she had the second pair on, she had hoped that her feet would one day be warm again. "Come in. I'll get the fire going.
It's not that cold, but Fred needs to be kept warm, said Jago. The thought of a fire encouraged Helena to go into the house. Jago was in the kitchen, a lean-to attached to the back of the property. A cottage, 1 room deep, that smelt of damp and slightly rotting vegetables. There was a small piece of land outside the kitchen window, and then there was the hill. Go through into the front room. Fred is there. Is there a bathroom of any kind I could use? I need to get the mud off my hands. She was expecting to be shown to an outdoor privy. It was that sort of house. Oh, of course. Sorry. He indicated a door just off the kitchen. It's in there. Not very salubrious, I'm afraid, but it has running water. There was an ancient lavatory with an overhead cistern and a cracked hand basin, both of which were fairly stained, but because of the broken window, the little room didn't smell. She felt a lot better when she came out. Right, said Jago, who had obviously been waiting for her. I'll introduce you to Fred. Although he was making all the right gestures, Jago's manner was making Helena feel unwelcome, and if she had had her car outside, she would have got into it and driven away. But she didn't have that choice. Jago ushered her into the front room, which was small but had the most amazing view. An old man was sitting in an armchair there. Next to him was a small table, covered with invalid paraphernalia. Going on what she could see, Fred was in need of quite a lot of support. Fred, this is Helena. Helena, this is Fred. Right. I'll make tea. Don't rush off, lad, said Fred, who looked frail but seemed to be in command of all his senses. Is Helena your girlfriend? Jago looked at Helena and gave a tiny shrug, as if he didn't know. Then he went to make the tea. Yes, said Helena firmly. Yes, I am his girlfriend. She went further into the room and sat on the chair next to Fred's. This view is wonderful. I could look at it all day. It was similar to the view that had inspired Helena so much from the kitchen doorway, but at a different angle, and there was no river at the bottom. That is pretty much all I do these days, look at the view. And yes, I'll miss it, said Fred. You're leaving here? Didn't John tell you? I can't manage here on my own, and my daughter is going to have me with her. But she's having the house made suitable and there are complications. Aren't there always when there are builders involved? He said this with a twinkle, but Helena realised he was a bit fed up. I suppose when you start building work, problems you never knew were there are revealed, said Helena. Yes, well, went on Fred. They wanted me to stay in hospital until the work was done. Said I couldn't come out and live here, as it wasn't fit for an elderly and infirm person who just had a serious op. Well, I wasn't staying in that place with all those ill people. They call me a bed blagger, blocker, one of those things. I put in a call to John and he came straight up here. He's very kind, said Helena. This was demonstrably true, and she'd experienced it herself. But there was still an awful lot about him she couldn't be anything like as sure of. He's a good lad. It wasn't fair what happened to him. What did happen to him? Although it felt a bit wrong to grill a sick old man for information, this did seem too good an opportunity to miss. Annoyingly, before Fred could tell her anything, Jago, Jonathan, came back into the room with a tray. He found another little table and put the tray on it. On the tray were 3 chipped mugs of tea and a packet of rich tea biscuits. The biscuits are a little stale, I'm afraid, said Jago. I haven't been able to go shopping. I've got shortbread in my car, said Helena. Sadly, it's down the hill and quite a way away. The road was closed, which was why I walked up. You walked up the hill to see me? Said Fred, astonished. Sorry to break it to you, said Jago, but I think she may have walked up here to see me. He gave her a sideways glance and a little smile that reminded her of how he had been when they'd been together. Why was he so different now? It's quite far, said Helena, or I'd run back down and fetch them. The running down part is fine, but walking back up is a bit exhausting. Why don't you go down in your pickup, John? suggested Fred. "Leave me and your young lady to talk."
"That's a good idea," said Helena.
"No, it's not. Not even for shortbread. Even though Helena's mother does make amazing shortbread."
Jago was firm.
"Now, Fred, do you want tea, or are you full of healthier fluids?"
"Tea doesn't taste the same anymore,"
said Fred sadly.
"But shortbread would."
He looked pleadingly at Jago, who shook his head.
"Maybe later Helena could sit with you while I go shopping and collect what she needs from her car, but she's only just arrived, and she can't be in charge of you without the proper training."
"Really?" asked Helena. "Did you have training, Jonathan?"
"No, he didn't,"
said Fred.
"And he lied to the woman from social services and said he was my son. Poor woman was so overworked and desperate for my bed that when John said he'd take full responsibility, she let him."
"And also, Helena probably needs to get back. When were you thinking of leaving?"
Jago obviously wanted her gone. Helena's heart sank. "As you know, I've only just arrived, and having come all this way, including walking up a very steep hill, I'd like an opportunity to get to know Fred a bit."
"Considering you didn't know Fred existed until a few minutes ago, I'm surprised at your enthusiasm for his company," said Jago.
"But now she's met me, she's in no hurry to leave. Isn't that right, Helena?"
Fred was obviously enjoying the argument, and Helena hoped that there would be plenty going on for him to enjoy when he moved to his daughters. While the scenery was spectacular here, it was very isolated. "That's right. But why don't we have our tea, and then Jonathan can start the training program so he can go shopping?" She sipped her tea. It was starting to go cold.
"Bring your tea," said Jago, "and I'll give you a tour of the house."
"Won't take long,"
said Fred cheerfully.
Apart from the kitchen, there was one room that was obviously Fred's bedroom, and another smaller room with a single bed in it.
"Oh," said Helena, taking in that there was nowhere for her to stay. "Sleeping in shifts, then?"
"Actually, if you are here, that would be good. I don't like to leave Fred unattended, even at night."
"So you stayed up all last night?"
"I dozed in the chair for a bit."
"But you don't want me here," she said. A statement, not a question.
He didn't answer for a long time, and when he did, his expression was bleak. "I want you here, but I don't want you to be here for the reason that you are."
"Which is?" That was quite a complicated sentence.
"I don't want you to have found out about my past. James must have told you, right?"
"No. I saw your picture on his Facebook page. And to be fair, only I would have recognised it. You're just really unlucky having a girlfriend like me." He didn't answer for so long, Helena thought he was never going to.
"Not unlucky. Terribly, terribly lucky."
"I came to hear your side of the story. I will tell you.
I promise. But not now. I must take advantage of you being here to get some urgent supplies."
"But Fred knows?"
"Fred doesn't know I reinvented myself. He's part of the story."
They heard a noise from the living room, and Jago moved quickly to get there. Fred was fine.
"Sorry, I just knocked my glass of water off the table. Sorry to frighten you, love,"
he added, smiling at Helena.
"If you can stop him causing chaos while I'm away for a couple of hours, I'll go shopping," said Jago, when everything was cleared up.
"How are you going to do that with the road closed?"
Jago grinned. "I'll do what I did on my way up here. Move the barriers, drive around the hole, then put the barriers back again. Simples."
Seeing him smiling again was like the sun coming out. Then he was gone, with a shopping list and a promise to text Jilly to tell her Helena was safe. "So, it's just you and me then, Fred," said Helena, hoping Jago wouldn't be too long, but knowing the nearest town was miles away and he wouldn't be back for a couple of hours.
"That's right. How are we going to pass the time?"
"Well," said Helena, "I was hoping—"
"Tell you what,"
said Fred, who didn't seem to have heard her.
"What I'd really like is for you to read to me."
"Oh, what, the newspaper?" Helena hid her disappointment that she couldn't spend the time grilling him.
Dick Francis, said Fred gleefully. They're all there on the shelf. Haven't been able to read them for years. You've got a nice voice. He smiled. See if you can find the first one. Dead Cert, I think it was.
Helena consoled herself with the fact that she quite liked Dick Francis too. I'll get myself a glass of water before I begin. Chapter 31. In the end, it was 3 hours before Jago got back. By this time, Helena and Fred were close friends. She'd read quite a lot of Dead Cert, made him a sandwich and a cup of tea, watched while he had a nap, and, frighteningly, helped him to the loo. Fortunately, once he was in there, he could manage. But the unevenness of the floors, and how hard he found it to manage them, demonstrated that he urgently needed to live somewhere else. Fred was asleep again by the time Helena heard Jago's pickup arrive. She ran out to meet him. "Hi, did you manage to get everything? Did you text Mum?"
I did, and she rang me immediately, so I was able to convince her you were fine, but wouldn't be back for a while. He studied her carefully. I didn't specify any time, so you don't need to worry about her worrying about you. But of course you can go now if you want to. She studied him back, trying to interpret his wishes from his calm, serious expression. She failed. What would you like me to do? Honestly, I'd like you to stay. It's too late for you to set off back home today in any case. Helena took a breath to ask if it was only concern for her that made him not want to leave, or if there were any other reasons. But her nerve failed her. She didn't feel she knew this Jonathan Jago very well and couldn't predict his response. "Okay, well, let's see what you've got and then think about supper. Fred had a cheese sandwich for lunch." "Really? He managed that?" "I took the crusts off and cut it into very small pieces, but he did find it a struggle. He enjoyed it, though. I read him an awful lot of Dick Francis, too." "So you didn't talk much?" Helena suppressed a sigh. "No, we didn't talk much." Every time she tried to talk about Jago, Fred had changed the subject. "He didn't tell me any of your secrets, but I need you to tell me them. I can't cope with not knowing who you are for much longer." Jago didn't bother to suppress his sigh. It was loud and heartfelt. "I know, but it'll take a while and I'm so tired and busy. Oh, by the way, I broke into your car and retrieved the shortbread in your overnight bag." "Useful and worrying at the same time, but mostly useful, so thank you." Then, remembering he hadn't slept properly because he'd been sitting up with Fred, she went on, "Why don't you have a nap? I'll do supper and maybe put the telly on for Fred to keep him amused." "That would be great. If you don't mind. Fred is my responsibility, not yours." "He's my friend, which is also important. And when you wake up, when we've a suitable moment, you're going to tell me just why he's your responsibility." "Okay." Jago seemed very tired, more tired even than a night dozing in an armchair should make you. He took a couple of steps out of the kitchen and then turned back. "Good luck with the telly. Only 3 channels and one of them is Welsh. Luckily I bought a paper." By 6 o'clock, Helena had made a cottage pie out of the mince Jago had bought and given Fred some. He was very enthusiastic about it, but didn't actually eat very much. Helena didn't eat very much either. She and Fred were drinking tea and looking at the view. Jago had been right about the telly not being up to much when Jago came in. They were both pleased to see him. Although happy with each other, Helena was learning how best to help Fred all the time. They were both aware of Jago's absence, although Fred called him John. "Go and get yourself some pie, and then come and entertain this young lady," said Fred. "She's bored with me." "I am absolutely not bored with you," said Helena indignantly. "But do help yourself to pie, Jago, and then join us. I want to know how you two met." It was a simple question, and Helena said it in the bright way people do when they're making small talk, but no one was fooled. "This may need a drink," said Jago. "I bought a bottle of rum. I know you like it, Fred." "Not really allowed it now, but you could put a drop in my tea and no one would notice." he said. "Just more tea for me, please," said Helena, when Jago looked at her inquiringly. "Oh, and ginger biscuits, please, for dunking."
"Good idea,"
said Fred. While Jago was away, Helena smiled at Fred. "So you and him go back a long way?" Fred smiled too, but shook his head.
"I'll let him tell you."
End of CD 7. CD 8.
There was a lot of moving small tables and shifting chairs slightly, and seeing Fred was all right before Jago finally said, "OK. Well, it was about 10 years ago, wasn't it, Fred?" Fred nodded.
10 years. I was a relatively fit man then.
"And you met where?" said Helena, who was by this time beside herself with impatience. She was crunching into ginger nuts as if they were the enemy.
"You'd better start at the beginning, lad,"
said Fred. "I don't know how much Helena knows. There's stuff on the internet and she'll have read that," said Jago.
"You tell her,"
said Fred firmly.
"There were a lot of lies told at the time. She'll only hear the whole truth from you."
"What have you read?" Jago asked Helena, obviously terribly unwilling to say a word more than necessary. "I read about the fire in the block of flats where 5 people were nearly killed. The fire brigade got awards for saving them. It was thought to be shoddy building work that made the fire spread once it had started. The building company, Relto, was condemned for its bad practice. The head of the company was sued for manslaughter but got off. Clever lawyers, everyone thought. The world was outraged. I actually remember it, although I was quite young and didn't pay much attention to current events."
"So was I,"
said Jago,
"though I was of working age. You were just a lad, Jonathan, and they tried to blame you for everything,"
said Fred.
"His uncle,"
Fred addressed Helena,
"he owned the business. He was responsible. What he said went. Young Jonathan was in quite a different part of the business. He was selling the properties that his uncle threw up."
"Did you work there too then, Fred?" asked Helena. He nodded.
"I was on the construction side."
"So you met through work?" Helena went on, hoping she'd get the whole story.
"Not at the time," said Jago. "I met Fred after it had all gone horribly wrong."
"Oh?" Helena felt she had to keep prompting because both Fred and Jago were so reluctant to tell her what had happened.
"For some reason," said Jago, "I got all the flack, the doorstepping, pilloried in the press, all that stuff." He paused. "Long sessions with the police, which actually worked in my favour in the end, because I got to know one of the younger ones. He was my contact when I wanted to find out about that Leo your mother was going out with."
Fred wasn't interested in any upsides. He was too indignant.
"You got that because your uncle kindly redirected all the stuff that he should have dealt with to his nephew."
Outrage gave Fred energy, and he seemed to have stopped being old and frail for the time being.
"He blamed everything on the apprentice, who was working his way up from the bottom to keep himself out of prison."
"Is that true?" Helena was outraged.
Jago nodded. "I was in a bad place in every way when I met Fred. We met at the site of the fire, by coincidence," said Fred. "I recognised him. We got chatting, and I offered to teach him bricklaying."
Jago grinned.
"You told me it was time I got calluses on my hands and actually learned how to build. You took me on. I learned my trade." He paused. "I decided to change my name by deed poll before I did that. Grew my hair and a bit of a beard. No one recognised me." "I never agreed with you having to change your identity," said Fred. "It looked as if you'd done something wrong." "Maybe it was cowardly, but I was so ashamed of my name. I didn't want to be known by it any more."
"How did you choose your new name?" asked Helena.
"Jago was a nickname from school, and Pengelly was my grandmother's name. There is a Cornish connection, so I'm not a complete fraud. Anyone else for more tea?"
While he was out of the room, Fred said,
"We've kept in touch, and he's always helped me out if I'm in bother. He supported my family too. Not with money, but with jobs and accommodation once or twice. He's built a new life for himself. I'm proud of him.
Helena's throat suddenly closed with emotion as she realised she felt proud of him too. After Jago had brought the tea, he went out again and came back with a bowl of jelly and ice cream for Fred.
My favourite,
he said happily as Jago put it in front of him. I suppose it's nice and easy to eat, said Helena. Fred gave her a funny look.
It's bloody delicious. It's always been my favourite.
Seeing Fred's, Helena wanted jelly and ice cream too. When they had all had it, Fred yawned.
Tell you what, it's turned into a lovely evening out there, he said to Jago. Why don't you take Helena outside and tell her the rest of the story? There's a nice bench a little way along. Perfect for looking at the view and talking.
Helena looked at Jago, who then looked at Fred.
You'll be okay? I've got my bell. I'll ring if I need you.
Jago got up and held out his hand for Helena's so he could pull her up too.
This calls for rum.
And more ginger biscuits. For dunking, she said.
Really?
Jago and Fred both looked horrified. Don't knock it till you've tried it. Jago had to go back inside for an old Mac and cushions, as the seat, although perfectly positioned, was soaking wet. It's an idyllic spot, said Helena. You get a bit of both views, the one at the front and the one at the back. Jago nodded.
My plan is to make the cottage habitable, extend it a bit, and then Fred could maybe come up for holidays with his daughter and her family.
He looked down at her.
Maybe we could come up here too.
He had become tentative, as if not quite sure how he stood with her. She picked up on his doubt and became shy. I would like that. He handed her a glass of rum and the packet of biscuits. She took one and dipped it in. So, she asked, what's the rest of the story?
It's more background, really. Before the fire, I was engaged to be married. We were young, but we were in love, and she had a big wedding planned. All the bells and whistles, country house hotel, a band for the day and another for the night. Her dress cost several £1,000s.
Oh my goodness. Helena crunched into a rum-soaked biscuit for support.
But after it all blew up, she broke off the engagement. Said she didn't want everyone to be putting up pictures and mocking her for marrying a man who could have been responsible for people dying.
Although they didn't die.
And I wasn't responsible. She knew that, but the rest of the world thought I was. She had a point.
Helena sipped the rum without the biscuit and found she liked it.
I suggested we elope, so we'd be married, but we just wouldn't have the big party. It turned out it was the big party she wanted, really, so our relationship probably would have ended in tears anyway.
He smiled ruefully.
She liked being engaged to the nephew of a major property developer. She didn't want to be shacked up with a simple builder who was going to have to start again with nothing.
There's that song, said Helena. If I were a carpenter and you were a lady.
Believe me, that song was often in my head in those early months.
So, you've not only lost your job and your reputation, you lost the love of your life as well.
Jago nodded. Except she wasn't the love of my life, as it turned out. She was quite selfish and a bit irritating.
He paused.
She would have never put aside her claustrophobia and got covered in mud because a stranger asked her to rescue a kitten.
Oh. Helena's mood had been pensive, but it took a little uplift now.
Although I suppose I can't blame her for wanting the huge extravaganza. It's what every little girl wants, isn't it? From when they're 9 years old. That's what she told me.
Helena shrugged. Is it? I don't know.
Really?
He seemed surprised, almost disbelieving. I may be on my own here, but I haven't given my wedding any thought at all. Now she did think about it. She realised she wanted something quite low-key at her mother's house. Tent in the garden. Lots of cake.
But don't you want to get married?
She couldn't read his expression. He was confused, she decided, possibly a bit disappointed, and disbelieving. Well, I haven't ruled it out, But my life has been focused on different things. My weaving, my career, earning a living. She paused. I would like children, eventually. I can't deprive my mum of grandchildren she's allowed to feed, but I haven't really thought about it. She sipped her rum but didn't quite have the heart to dip another biscuit in it. She did want to get married, but there was only one man she wanted to get married to, and right now she had no idea what he wanted. And although he'd told her about his name change and the reason for it, could she trust him? Also, while he was talking about marriage and asking her about weddings, he wasn't asking her to marry him. And he might have told her about his past now, but he hadn't said anything before. Had he been hoping to avoid telling her? Ever? She suddenly felt desperately tired and wanted her own bed and a novel where nothing bad happened. She yawned and then got up. What time does Fred go to bed? Why do you ask? Because I want to go to bed now. I think it's a rum. It was better to blame it on the rum than to explain the turmoil he had caused her. I could start getting him into bed any time now. But why don't you go on now and get some sleep? I'll be fine until about 4 o'clock in the morning. She felt a wave of fondness for him. He was being very kind. You don't have to stay up that long. Let me have a couple of hours and then wake me. All right. Something about the way he said this made her realise he wouldn't wake her unless or until he was passing out with tiredness. I'll set my alarm, just in case, she said. He made an indignant face. In case of what? In case you forget to wake me. He laughed. Okay, I'll wake you after 2 hours or so then. When she was finally convinced he wouldn't take the entire night shift on his own, she went to bed. It was odd going to bed in the little narrow bed he'd been in so recently. The mattress was old and had a dip in the middle, which meant it had a coffin-like feel, but Helena decided it was cosy. The room was full of things cleared out of the living room, probably to make space for Fred's medical paraphernalia. But underneath the piled-up furniture and boxes, she found a cache of Mills and Boon novels. Oh, lovely, said Helena out loud, and found a couple she liked the look of. But she was asleep before she'd even properly opened the first one. She was awake as soon as she heard Jago's tap on the door. She called to him that she was up and pulled on some clothes. She left her hair in a tangle, thinking she could brush it when she was watching Fred. That was quick, said Jago, looking at her a bit strangely. I did my best. Now, you go and get your head down. The bed is all warmed up for you. He didn't go immediately. I like your hair like that, he said. Really? Helena didn't believe him. You know what to do. Help Fred to the loo, get him anything he needs, and if he's too heavy or anything happens, call me immediately. Okay? She nodded. On your way, bonny lad, she said, with a smile and a bad Scottish accent. The moment he had gone, she looked in the mirror. Her hair was a tousled mess, but, she realised, it was also a bit sexy. At least Jago couldn't possibly think she'd done it specially. It was quite peaceful sitting in a dark room with a table lamp and a good book. She took Fred to the bathroom once, which took a long time, and before she knew it, it was nearly time to wake Jago. She decided she needed a cup of tea and made one for Jago too. Jago was facing the wall and stirred when she put the mug down on the bedside table. Jago, are you awake? It's time for a shift change. I've brought you tea. Jago turned over, and before she knew what he was about to do, he had reached up and pulled her down for a kiss. She found herself in his arms, half lying on the single bed. For a second or two, she allowed herself to stay there, wrapped in his arms, in the dark, just the two of them. And then thoughts of Fred, possibly needing the bathroom again, made her pull away. We haven't time for this, she said. Drink your tea, and then get up. She heard the shower going, an attachment on the taps in the narrow bath, and shortly afterwards he appeared in the living room. Okay, I'll take over now, he said. Thanks for the tea. She thought she'd never sleep, but the bed was warm and cocoon-like, and the room very dark. While she did spend quite a bit of time thinking about Jago and how she felt about him now, she did drift off, and soon Jago was shaking her arm.
Hey, wake up. You must have been very deeply asleep. I've been knocking and calling for ages.
She sat up in bed. Oh, gosh, sorry. What time is it?
Just after 4. Dawn is breaking, and the birds are singing loud enough to deafen you.
Have you made me tea?
I have. It's getting cold, so hurry up.
The dawn was so lovely, it made Helena, who was a bit sleep-deprived, feel almost weepy. The sun was coming up, sending shafts of sunlight through woodlands, across fields and into the valleys. In the background, the birds were so loud there could have been a music track. She sat in the chair that Jago had moved so she could see the view and sipped her tea. As she watched the mist, which again reminded her so much of carded wool, drift across the landscape, she saw a little group of deer emerge from the trees and start grazing in a field. "Look," she whispered, "the deer."
You don't have to whisper,
said Jago, who'd reappeared behind her.
They won't hear you from here.
She dug him in the arm with her elbow. "Not them, Fred. How is he? Anything you need to tell me?"
Not really. He gets up early, though, so there's no point in my going back to bed, really.
Go for a couple of hours. You can get him up when he's ready. I'll wake you. She had been planning to read, but instead Helena sat and watched the day slowly wake with a promise of sunshine and light. But distracting her from the beauty, even more than the progress of the deer, who ate the grass for a bit and then meandered across to the next wood, were her thoughts of Jago. She had to get them into order, she decided. Did she still love him? She asked herself. She decided she did, because the thought of anything bad happening to him made her really sad. She tested the theory by imagining something awful happening to Cressida or Martin. She was upset and really didn't want it to come about, but she didn't mind as much as when she thought of Jago suffering. Could she forgive him for not telling her about his past? Well, she decided, he probably would have told her eventually, and so, yes. Except she didn't know this for sure. Doubt waved in and out of her mind. He'd worked hard to create a new identity. Why would he risk telling anyone about his old one? Abandoning the back and forth this created, she asked herself other questions. Was Jago a kind man? Easy. Yes, he was. She'd experienced it herself and seen it with Fred. He was extremely kind. Did she fancy him? Another easy one. Yes, she did, a lot. Hard question. Did she love him enough to overlook her doubts? Probably yes. Hardest question. Was he so disillusioned by women that he wouldn't be able to commit to a relationship again? Answer was definitely, don't know, followed by, hope not. Final question. How did he feel about her? He certainly fancied her and liked her as a person, but love? She couldn't know. He hadn't said as much, although he had come near it. She was grateful when Fred stirred, wanting the bathroom. She was driving herself mad with her questions. Chapter 32. The day progressed slowly, filled with small tasks, until after lunch Jago said, I think I'll go somewhere and pick up emails and things. Do you want me to take your phone? Your emails would download and then you could read them. That'd be nice, said Helena. Get me a newspaper with a decent crossword in it, said Fred. And if you can get in touch with my daughter, tell her I'm being very well looked after, but I need to get somewhere I can move about more easily. I think she knows that, Fred, said Jago, but I will pass on the message. Helena walked out with him to the car. The trouble is, he said, Fred's daughter is struggling to afford the alterations. You do get some help from the government, but not everything she needs. Oh dear, that's worrying. It wouldn't be worrying if she'd accept help from me, but she says her family has had enough from me and won't take any more. Helena let her gaze take in what she now thought of as the backdoor view. Isn't there some way they could raise money from this place? It's in such a heavenly spot. It would make the ideal holiday home or rental. Anything, really.
He frowned. Well, he said after a bit, I suppose I could buy it from them if they wanted to sell. I would be taking on a far greater mortgage load than I'm happy with. But if it did the trick for them, I'd do it.
Or maybe you pay for the renovations, etc., and pay yourself back from the lettings. Once you're reimbursed, the rental income would come to them. And they could come and stay too, when it's done up. The cottage and the view would stay in the family.
Why didn't I think of that? It's a perfect solution. Clever you. I'll still have to borrow a fairly hefty amount, but nothing like as massive.
Excited, he put his arms round her and lifted her off the ground before giving her a big kiss on the cheek.
I'll put it to Maureen. See what she says.
When he came back from his trip a few hours later, he said,
First, the row's back open. Second, Chilly wants to hear from you ASAP. And finally, Maureen was delighted with your suggestion. I had to explain that the money for the repairs would be a loan and not a gift, and she was quite happy. They thought they'd have to sell Fred's house, and although they knew it was for the best, they were very sad at the prospect. This way, they can have their cake and eat it, so to speak. He grinned. And, as she's accepted a quick injection of cash from me, her house will be Fred-friendly very soon. Now he looked more serious. Then we can go home.
2 mornings later, Maureen and her husband came for Fred, which was a relief, for although Helena and Jago had developed techniques for looking after him, it had become increasingly clear he needed a properly modified home. When Helena heard a car drive up, while Jago and Fred were in the bathroom giving him a shower before his journey home, she went out to meet it.
So,
said Maureen, a pleasant-looking woman in her 50s with a warm smile. Are you the wonderful woman John has been talking about? Helena was thrown, partly by Maureen's use of Jago's old name, but more by his apparent description of her. I'm Helena, she said. I can't answer for anything else. You are wonderful, because you've been helping John look after my dad, so just accept the compliment. She gave Helena a quick hug. It's been a bit of a nightmare, getting the house ready for Dad. I bet, said Helena. But John has saved the day, again. Well, he told me that Fred saved him when he was in a very dark place, so he's delighted to be able to give something back. He's given back with interest, said Maureen. Come in, said Helena. Though it's your house, really. I put the kettle on ages ago. It's probably boiled dry by now. John, is giving Fred a shower for the journey home. Not easy with that dreadful thing you put on the taps. I never have been able to work it without soaking the bathroom and myself. Oh no, nor me, said Helena. Now tea, or would you prefer coffee? They had a quick chat before Maureen said, Well, Dad, it's time we were getting off. Fred looked as if he would argue and then said, I suppose you're right. Not that Newport is that far. It will take us a while to settle you in the other end, said Maureen, and the family all eager to see you. Fred smiled. They're a good lot. I'm very lucky. When the car had driven away, leaving them waving on the hilltop, Helena realised she would miss Fred. She'd become very fond of him and remembered her mother saying that when you look after something or someone, you begin to care about them. He's a lovely person, she said. I really like him. And he likes you too. Really? How do you know? He told me. He said, Don't let that one slip through your fingers, young Jonathan. You'll regret it forever. Oh, said Helena, feeling herself blush. Yes, he's very wise, is Fred. He moved around so his arms encircled her. What do you say to us, making us a permanent thing? What do you mean? She looked up at him, fairly certain she knew, but not quite sure enough to reply without clarification. I'm asking you to marry me. He gazed down at her, a sense of wonder in his expression. I decided I wasn't going to try the whole marriage thing again. It was such a disaster before. But you're different. 1,000 thoughts and questions floated through Helena's mind like motes of dust. Could she trust him? And did he love her as much as she loved him? Her silence made him talk more. I've never met a girl like you, Helena, so sweet and kind, and yet so maddeningly attractive. I didn't realise girls came in that model. I thought they were all selfish and narcissistic. But to be honest, I think I'd have fallen in love with you, even if you hadn't rescued the kitten or done anything kind. I know it hasn't been long, but it feels right. I feel I've met my other half. But how do you know it's real? You thought you were in love before. Because it's happened without me realising it. I love you, Helena, for better, for worse. And if you leave me, you should know I'll go on loving you for the rest of my life. I realise it's not easy for you, because you don't know who is declaring their love to you. Is it Jonathan, or is it Jago? Well, I tell you, it's Jago. Jonathan was a boy who was made a man by bad things happening to him. But can you believe me? Can you trust me? Helena's uncertainty left her, as surely as if it had never been there. Of course she could trust him, and he had told her he loved her pretty clearly. Oh, Jago, of course. And yes, I'd love to marry you. He gave a deep sigh of relief before his hold on her tightened, and he kissed her. Chapter 33. Jilly had put on a brave mother's smile while she waved off her daughter into the rainstorm, but she was very worried. Watching your child get over heartbreak was, she knew, one of the hardest parts of being a parent, and she really hoped she didn't have to do it for Helena and Jago. They were such a good couple, so well suited, and whatever his past, she was certain Jago was a good man. She was delighted when William called. Jilly, are you very busy? Could you tunnel out for a visit somewhere? It was lovely to hear his voice, and she particularly loved hearing him say her name. I'm not that busy, as it happens, being midweek. What did you have in mind? I want you to come and see my house. Just for a moment, Jilly had a nasty flashback of when Leo took her to see his house, the beautiful house he didn't own. Oh, she said. William seemed to know she was having a wobble. I just thought you ought to know where I lived. After all, we are a couple now, aren't we? We definitely are. Jilly gave a little sigh of happiness. When will we go? Tomorrow. I'd like to take you out to lunch first nearby and then show it to you. I'm planning to take the afternoon off. I do love an outing when a bit of bunking off is involved, said Jilly. Will you pick me up, or shall I meet you somewhere? I've got to do some shopping, so it will be no trouble. I prefer to pick you up, if you don't mind. Then it's more like a date, and less like an estate agent's appointment. Jilly laughed, and shortly afterwards they disconnected. William lived in a nearby town that was famous for its antique shops. Fortunately, it also had a fair number of very nice places to eat. He took her to an Italian wine bar that was also a delicatessen, where he was greeted like an old friend. William, your table is free. I'll bring the board over when you're settled. The proprietor gave Jilly a bow that was respectful and curious at the same time. Hello, Franco. This is my good friend Jilly. Jilly dipped her head nervously and smiled back. Then she followed them to the table. I'm not going to bother to ask if you come here often, she said, when they were both seated. He laughed. It's my regular. I live very nearby. A townhouse? Yes. I can't wait to see it. Could you imagine yourself living in a town, Jilly? Jilly thought about it. This is a very nice town. Lovely shops, lovely places to eat. She guessed he was showing her his home before asking if she'd like to move in with him. It was terribly early days. While she was completely sure of William, she wasn't sure she was ready to throw up her life to be with him. It made her very twitchy. He laughed, aware she wasn't answering his question. What are you going to have to eat? She asked.
I usually have whatever Franco tells me is best. It saves me having to decide.
I'm not good at decision-making either, said Jilly, if it doesn't particularly matter.
But if it does matter?
I'm usually okay on those. Franco came up.
So, what can I get you?
What's a special? Asked William.
Asparagus with a little pasta, said Franco.
That sounds delicious, said Jilly.
We'll have 2 of those then.
He looked at Jilly.
A glass of wine?
Yes, please, said Jilly. Wine would help.
A glass of wine for my friend, sparkling water for me, said William.
It's the first asparagus I've had this year, said Jilly, when they had been served. And I've never thought of having it with pasta.
I suppose it comes naturally to an Italian to put pasta with things.
It was completely delicious. You are so lucky living near here, said Jilly enthusiastically. It was always a safe thing to say.
I am, said William, but it has its downsides.
Really?
Not that near the gliding club, for example.
Oh, said Jilly. Have you been gliding lately? She tried to think if he'd had the opportunity to go gliding, but, in spite of the wine and the lovely food, she was still a little on edge and couldn't remember his schedule.
And could I go again? Of course, any time. We must make a date for it. He smiled warmly at her. I have to say, you are the first girlfriend I've had who has wanted to go gliding. Have you had a lot of girlfriends?
Jilly felt this was an opportunity to find out about William's past without appearing nosy.
A few since my wife died. None of them remotely serious.
He put his hand on hers and looked into her eyes. Before she could respond, Franco came over.
Can I get you dessert? Coffee, peppermint tea?
William looked at his watch.
I think maybe we'd better have coffee at my house, if you don't mind, Jilly.
Not at all, said Jilly. She was keen to see it, and to find out if William had invited her here for more than just to look at the place where he lived. She turned to Franco. But another time, I'd love to try your desserts. That pasta was amazing.
A woman who eats desserts, said Franco, with a satisfied nod. Excellent.
William's flat was just across the road.
I own the whole property, but, as you see, the bottom part is currently an antique shop.
He opened the door and ushered Jilly in. Oh, what a lovely shop, said Jilly, although she realised the antiques were all very high-end and beyond what she would have permitted herself to spend.
Don't get distracted, said William firmly. Hello, Peter. We're just going upstairs, he said to the proprietor.
As Jilly went up the steps ahead of William, she wondered if the look Peter had given her had been as speculative as Franco's. She was getting the impression that William bringing a woman home was unusual. He unlocked the door.
There, he said. Go in.
Jilly was in a beautiful first-floor sitting room and found herself moving to the triple window that overlooked the street. The room was large and had a beautiful stone fireplace. It appeared to have been furnished from the shop down below.
Of course, it would be perfectly possible to take back the shop and incorporate it into the house, said William. The kitchen is through here, and rather small.
It was small, but very well fitted, and perfectly big enough for one, or even two. William opened another door.
Bedroom, ensuite, dressing room, etc. There are 2 more rooms upstairs. There's a bathroom there too. You can't have guests coming down the stairs in the night, especially if they're Aunt Daphne.
Jilly laughed, pleased to think of Daphne being here. Personally, she felt a bit overwhelmed.
Imagine a big kitchen downstairs, opening out onto the courtyard garden.
I'm doing that. It's huge.
Yes, too huge for one person, which is why I've never done it.
Have you had this house long? He nodded.
Yes, I bought it about 20 years ago. It was derelict. I had a small legacy that helped with the deposit. The rent for the shop covered the mortgage.
You're telling me very clearly that you own this house, she said. Because
of what that scoundrel Leo did, implying he owned a house he rented.
I love the word scoundrel. It's so charmingly old-fashioned."
"I am charmingly old-fashioned,"
said William. Gilly laughed. She was beginning to relax a bit. She wandered around this amazing flat and tried to picture herself in it. She would like being near the shops. She'd love to be within walking distance of nice restaurants. But how would she cope without her B&B guests? She needed work, not just for money, but because she believed work was good for people. She went into the kitchen, which was at the back, and looked down at the courtyard garden. She could see Ulysses there, possibly curled up on top of one of the stone sinks, crushing the succulents or auriculas or whatever was growing there.
"So,"
said William, who had let her roam about and explore,
"could you live here?"
She sighed and bit her lip.
"If I was to offer you my heart and my home, so to speak. I mean, if you took my home and didn't want my heart, I would have to find somewhere else to live."
She managed to laugh.
"And I'm thinking that we will have to decide if we want to live together or carry on as we are."
He looked at her with a mixture of seriousness and gentle humour.
"How do you feel about it? I know it's awfully soon to think about these things, but I feel I've wasted enough of my life, hoping you'd have a problem with your VAT, so you'd come and see me. I want you there every day, greedy though it sounds."
She considered her answer. It was a big step and very early days, and yet somehow she felt ready to face it. "I do always feel sad when you go home in the morning."
"So do I.
But although this is a really lovely house, flat, whatever, I'm not sure it's quite for me. The thing is, could you live in my house? I mean, I feel I'm asking you to choose between an amazing, prize-winning racehorse and a big, clumsy old Clydesdale with feet the size of dinner plates, hairy fetlocks, a head the size of a small child, which, however well groomed and polished, will always be a bit of a lump."
He laughed. "I love that analogy. And I do have to tell you that I've always been very fond of heavy horses and old houses in the country."
"And of course you could bring any favourite pieces of furniture. I could get rid of some of my stuff. Pass it on to Helena, possibly."
"Not your son?"
"No, Martin wouldn't want it. He and his wife have quite a different style to mine."
"I'll think about what my favourite bits of furniture are."
He frowned slightly.
"I can't think of anything, except the desk that was my father's."
"You wouldn't want to bring that beautiful fireplace? I'm sure I could find room for it."
"I think you'll find it's fairly firmly attached to this building."
"Oh, shame. I was hoping for an upgrade," said Gilly. Then she became serious. "But what about the B&B? How will you feel about having to share your home with strangers? It's not for everyone. Sebastian, my ex-husband, was horrified at the thought, and he didn't have to do it. Martin thinks it's awful."
"I don't think it will worry me. We could have our own space after all."
"And you don't have to sell this house. You could rent it, keep it in case—" She paused, worrying if she was saying too much. "If things didn't work out."
"You know what? I think things will work out."
He paused in his turn.
"Shall I tell you when I decided to stop looking for women who might become life partners and only have very casual girlfriends?"
"If you like."
"It's when you became a client."
"Oh."
"You were in a dreadful state, and I knew that I had to bide my time, and it might be a long time, before I could do anything about it. But I fell in love with you the first moment you came into my office."
Gilly took advantage of the sofa that was just behind her and sat down rather quickly. "Really?"
"Yes, I hope that doesn't seem stalkerish to you."
"It's a bit surprising." She imagined herself as she had been that day, red-nosed, swollen-eyed, unable to think clearly.
"It surprised me too, I must say," said William cheerfully.
"Well," Gilly said after a long pause, "I'm glad you decided to do something about it eventually."
"Me too, and we mustn't forget Daphne's input, although I did rather resent her interference at the time."
"I think we should tell her we're together," said Gilly. "Have her to dinner or something."
I've had something a bit more ambitious in mind."
Jilly felt she should stop being surprised by William, given that at one time she had thought he was just a really nice accountant. But it was difficult. Which is? William came and sat beside her.
Remember my surprise party?
It wasn't long ago. Even I can remember that far back. He laughed.
Well, it wasn't quite the party I'd have liked, because Daphne had got an old address book, and so missed out on people I would have loved to have there. So, I thought if I gave another party, same venue probably, it was okay, you could invite your friends and family too, and we could announce ourselves as a couple.
Unusual, said Jilly.
Well, I prefer to be able to announce something a bit more conventional, but I feel it's too soon.
Jilly felt she knew what he meant, but wasn't quite sure enough of herself to follow this up. Well, to be honest, I'd much rather have it at my house. We could have a marquee in the garden. It would be lovely, and it would make sense of the whole thing if you're going to move in with me.
It would be an awful lot of work for you, although of course we get a caterer.
I'd like to do the puddings myself, the fun part of the party.
He took her into his arms. That would be amazing. How soon do you think we could do it?
I don't know.
I'd like to do it as quickly as possible. Would a fortnight be too soon?
Shall we see about the marquee and then decide? Said Jilly. I have a favourite firm I use.
Excellent. Franco would do the catering if we asked him. He paused. He's been wondering out loud why I'm single for long enough.
Maybe we should go back and tell him we're coupled up.
William kissed her again. One of the reasons I love you. You're so down with the kids.
Jilly found this thought so hilarious she had to have a drink of water to calm herself down. Jilly was very happy when William dropped her off, particularly as he had promised to be back for supper. She walked around the house thinking about what furniture she could get rid of, so William could have enough things to make the house seem partly his. He'd need space for his desk. Would under the window in the sitting room do, or would he actually like a proper study? In which case, the room Jilly currently used for flower arranging and as a general dumping ground could be cleared out and made very nice. But in the meantime, if she moved Martin's old desk, which wasn't very special really, William's desk would fit. She'd asked Martin if he wanted it, although it wouldn't really fit into his and Cressida's minimal, modern, decorative scheme. Thinking about Martin made her realise she'd better let him and Cressida know about William and that she should do it face to face. She'd email him to invite them over. But the more she thought about telling him, the more nervous she became. She ought to phone, but didn't want to. She didn't escape talking to him. He rang right back as soon as he got her email.
What is this thing you want to tell us, Ma? Nothing silly, I hope.
What do you mean? What could I be telling you that's silly? She knew exactly what he meant, though, and in his eyes, yes, it was silly.
I don't know, he said, but I think it would be better if you came here to tell us whatever it is.
I was going to make the stew you like, with the cheese scones.
So, you wanted to butter me up with my favourite food?
She didn't bother to deny it. I just thought you'd like it.
Come to us. Tomorrow night? About 7? Cressida would never eat stew and scones.
Chapter 34. She brought flowers from her garden, already in her jam jar, so Cressida wouldn't have to worry about finding a vase. She might not even have a vase. Some cheese straws. Martin loved anything cheesy. And a book for Ismini. She also got out a bottle of wine from the cellar, which she thought looked okay, although she couldn't remember much about it. She bought it after a long and persuasive phone call from a famous wine merchant some time ago. Now she really hoped it was nice. On Martin and Cressida's doorstep, waiting for the bell to be answered, she wished she brought 2 bottles.
Mum! Hi!
Said Martin. He hugged her briefly. He made Jilly feel wary. Hello, darling. How lovely to see you. Is everyone well? It seems ages.
Well, come in. Oh, thank you for this, he said, taking the bottle and leaving Jilly with her arms still fairly full.
Cressida, looking very well groomed and thin, was perched on the edge of the sofa, her knees clamped together. She had very tense legs, Jilly felt, and now, when she got up, every sinew of them was visible. "Jilly, you brought flowers. How lovely." "Yes," said Jilly, handing them over. "They just need some water. You don't need to rush around trying to find a vase for them." "Very thoughtful," said her daughter-in-law, although Jilly suspected she was the sort of person who thought flowers in jam jars was a bit shabby chic and not her style. "And where's my lovely granddaughter?" she asked. "I've got a book for her that she might like." "She's staying with a friend. We felt we could relax more if she wasn't here." "Oh, well, let me know if she likes the book. I could get more by that author." "Very kind. She loves reading, as you know." "She's a credit to you," said Jilly, wishing her granddaughter were there in person. A little light relief would have been very welcome. And she loved Izzy. Martin handed her a glass.
"Sherry, Mum?"
he asked. She took the glass. She did like sherry, but the Tio Pepe Martin served was very dry, and she yearned to tell him she liked something a bit sweeter. A nice Amontillado was much more her thing. "So," she said, having taken a sip, "shall we get what I have to tell you over? Tell you now?"
"No," said Martin urgently. "Not yet."
"It's no big deal, really," said Jilly. "It's only that—"
"Stop,"
said Martin, holding up a commanding hand.
"Dad's coming."
"What?" Jilly stopped trying to be well-mannered and restrained. "Why? What did you invite him for?"
"I thought if you were going to be telling us something potentially serious, he should be here," said Martin.
Jilly took a breath, forcing herself to remember that Martin was away for most of the acrimonious divorce proceedings, and she'd made a point of not telling her children quite how awful their father was. Helena knew a lot more, of course. It had been harder to hide it from her. "What I have to tell you, Martin, is absolutely nothing to do with your father."
"Well, it must be something important, or you wouldn't be making such a big deal of it,"
said Martin. Jilly drained her sherry glass. This was going very badly. Martin was so hostile. Maybe she should just say that she wanted to get rid of his desk, but not say why. But then it would look dreadful if the next time Martin and his family came over, William literally had his feet under the table. And there was a party. She'd have to invite Martin and Cressida to that. She took a breath. "Well, there are two things. The first is, I don't want to sell my house, but I do want to get rid of some bits of furniture. I wanted to see if you wanted them." There was a short, tense silence. Martin pursed his lips. Then he said haughtily,
"Well, it's a shame you don't want to help out your family, but I accept your decision. And the second thing? It can't only be that, or you wouldn't be here."
If Martin hadn't been such a serious person, she'd have said, "You've got me banged to rights." As it was, she made a non-committal little sound. The doorbell jangled, and Jilly had time to wonder if it was the most irritating one she had ever heard. Then she heard her ex-husband's deep, loud voice.
"She's still got that sardine can of a car, I see," he said.
As he was still in the hall, it was possible he didn't intend Jilly to hear him, but it was unlikely. "Hello, Sebastian," said Jilly.
"Hello, Jilly,"
he said, and bent to kiss her cheek. The smell of his aftershave made her shudder. "It's been a while," she said.
"Well, you know why. I would have been more than happy to keep things amicable, but you couldn't seem to do that."
It occurred to Jilly that he'd got married in the first place, so he'd have someone constantly on hand to blame things on. Nothing was ever his fault. It was always hers, however unreasonable he'd been. "Shall we go through?" said Cressida, who seemed nervous. "It's all ready." Although she knew Cressida would be perfectly prepared, Jilly leaped to her feet. "Let me give you a hand." She followed Cressida through to the kitchen. "I'm so sorry, Jilly," said Cressida immediately. "It was not my idea to invite Sebastian. I've always thought there was another side to why your marriage broke down." "There was, but I never wanted my children to see quite how bad things were. It was harder to keep it from Helena, Who was still at home, though? Cressida nodded. Jilly spotted an open bottle of wine. Do you mind if I have some of that? I'm going to need help if I'm going to get through this. Of course, said Cressida. You can always get a cab home. Jilly smiled faintly. While Cressida's back was turned, she sent William a little text asking how he was. Making contact with him gave her courage. Back in the dining room, sitting round the glass table, which made you cold if you leaned on it, Cressida served out salmon and steamed vegetables. Everyone was given 2 little new potatoes. Martin put an inch of wine into each wineglass. The wine didn't have room to breathe. It had room to hyperventilate and faint, Jilly felt. Very grateful for the extra half glass she'd gulped down in the kitchen. She was still trembling with indignation that Martin had invited Sebastian without telling her. 3 forkfuls in, Martin said, "So, what's the big announcement, Mum? Apart from the fact that you don't want to sell your house." With everyone looking at her, Jilly, just for a moment, was tempted to declare she had a terminal illness just to see their faces. And in fact, this thought gave her courage. Think how much worse the whole revelation could have been. Okay, well, it's quite simple. William, my boyfriend, is moving in with me. We'll have to get rid of some furniture, and I wondered if you wanted your old desk, Martin. She knew she'd been lucky to get such a long sentence out without being interrupted. During their marriage, even when she wasn't delivering life-changing news, Sebastian had found it very hard to let her say more than about 5 words at a time. "What?" shouted Sebastian, spitting a little. "Mum, William is your freaking accountant," said Martin. "Jilly," said Cressida, who had been an ally for such a brief time. "What about Leo?" "Leo and I were not destined to be a couple," said Jilly, deciding not to tell Cressida that Leo was a lying fantasist with strong leanings towards embezzlement. "You're going to let your miserable accountant move in with you?" demanded Sebastian, leaning towards her in the intimidating way he had used so often in their marriage. "Well, let me tell you, that's not going to happen." "It's nothing to do with you, Sebastian." Jilly reached out for the bottle and topped up her glass. "Really, Mum, how can you even think of moving another man into our home?" "I raised my children in that house, the one you insisted on keeping, although I was entitled to half," said Sebastian. "But you didn't raise your children in it. I did, and I did keep it. It's mine, and if I want William to share it with me, it's my decision. Cressida, dear, is there more wine somewhere?" "Getting drunk won't help," said Martin. "Usually, I'd agree with you," said Jilly, her head never clearer. "But right now, I think wine is the only answer." "So, tell us about this William, then," asked Sebastian. "He's an accountant," said Martin, as if that was sufficient to damn him. "His hobby is gliding," said Jilly. Sebastian laughed. "Well, you won't be able to join in with that, will you?" "Oh, yes, I will," said Jilly quietly. "I like gliding." The way she said it gave the impression she'd done it more than once, but as she fully intended to go often, it wasn't really a lie. "What?" said everyone, more or less at the same time. The general disbelief was at once patronising and rather satisfying. "It's amazing up there. We live in such a good area for it. The scenery is so beautiful." "But you won't even fly in a small plane," said Sebastian. "A lot of things have changed since you knew me," she said. "I'm not the woman you left crying in a heap." She picked up her glass. It was empty. Cressida leaned across and topped it up. "You can't do this. You know I won't permit it," said Sebastian. A memory of fear touched Jilly like a ghost. He'd been a bully and frightened her. The expression coercive control hadn't been in use at the time, but that was exactly what she had suffered throughout her marriage. She would give in to keep the peace until she stopped giving in, and that was when he began to get really threatening. "You have no power to stop me doing anything," said Jilly. "You bullied me all through our marriage, and I put up with it for the sake of our children. but they're grown up now, and your influence over me is finished. I have met a man who makes me happy, who loves me and who is kind. We're going to live together, and there's not a thing you can do about it."
"Oh, really? I think you'll find I can do a lot."
She gave him a look which she hoped made him feel like dirt under her shoe. "Now, if you'll excuse me," she said, picking up her handbag, "I'll just pop to the loo." Once she was in the hall, Jilly opened the front door and let herself out. She walked down the drive and past her car. She knew she wasn't fit to drive, although she still felt very clear-headed. When she was out on the road, she found her phone. She sent Cressida a quick text thanking her and explaining she had to leave unexpectedly. Then she went to favourites and called a taxi. Because she was a good customer, they said they'd come immediately. However, she knew it would take them a good 15 minutes to reach her, and she began to feel anxious in case anyone came out of the house to look for her. She walked along the road and round a bend, so she would be out of sight. While she was walking, adrenaline making her heart race, Jilly's mind focused on the failure of their marriage. In Sebastian's opinion, men were the ones to be adored, to be pandered to, appeased, obeyed. Jilly blamed his mother for making him believe this. She'd been a strong woman who never pandered to anyone, but she'd never liked Jilly, never thought she was good enough for her son. Jilly had been perversely pleased that they'd stayed married until after Sebastian's mother had died, not giving her the chance to say, "I told you so." Martin shared some of his father's faults, although Cressida would never be bullied, and back there she had been a little bit on Jilly's side. Although Jilly realised now she and Martin had set her up with Leo to try to get him to persuade her to sell her house. However, she doubted if they'd intended that Leo should ask her to marry him in the bizarre way he had. She realised these thoughts weren't calming and tried to focus on something else. But at that moment, there was nothing else. She tried some deep breathing, and that did help. Then she heard what she'd been dreading, slamming car doors and raised voices. She stepped behind a tree, hoping she was hidden, and heard a car drive away at speed, shooting past the tree where she was sheltering. Sebastian always set off before he thought where he was going, before he'd done up his seatbelt, and latterly before he'd put on his glasses. Now he'd have been better off looking for her on foot, but that wasn't his way. Thank goodness. Although she was anxious, lest the cab would arrive and the driver not be able to find her, she stayed where she was. It was possible that Martin would also go in search of his mother. There was the sound of a second car, but as far as she could tell, it was going in the opposite direction. So, Sebastian and Martin had both gone off in their fast cars, looking for a woman who wasn't exactly a speed walker. There was a little park not far away from Martin and Cressida's house. Jilly had spent a lot of time in it years ago, when Ismene was a toddler. Martin would know about this park, but Sebastian wouldn't. She made her way to it. If Martin found her, it would be okay, just as long as Sebastian didn't. The thought of being alone with him in a lonely place in the evening was not pleasant. She wished Helena wasn't so far away, somewhere in the hills above the Wye Valley. She had time to wish she'd been wearing her Fitbit and that she hadn't fallen on the wine in quite such a desperate way, before she had a text from her cab driver asking where she was. She told him about the park, and within a very few minutes he was there, and she was being driven back to Fairacres at speed. She wondered when her heart would catch up with her brain and stop beating so fast. As the cab approached the Fairacres drive, Jilly saw William's car parked in front of the house, and then William himself, waiting by the front door. She thrust a couple of notes into the cab driver's hands, ignoring his protest that it was too much money, and got out of the cab and ran towards him and into his arms. "Oh, William, how lovely to see you. What are you doing here?" "Your weird text told me something was wrong. I didn't know where your son lives, so I came here. What's up?" He held her and stroked her back and her hair, murmuring words of comfort. "Let's go in the house, and I'll tell you." Now she was safe, Jilly felt as if she'd panicked, and knew that if she hadn't had too much wine, she wouldn't have been so impetuous. But Sebastian could be frightening, and Martin could be dominating. Well, it was my fault, really. I had too much to drink.
Why do women always blame themselves for things? Or have you been conditioned to do that?
William wasn't usually so blunt, but it made her think. She headed towards the kitchen and he followed her. They sat opposite each other at the kitchen table. I probably have been conditioned to do that. Everything was my fault in my marriage, from the roof leaking to the weather being bad, to the fact I had a difficult relationship with my mother-in-law. Although she was a very strong character, my ex, Sebastian, blamed the problems we had entirely on me.
So why did you feel the need to drink too much, although you don't seem remotely drunk?
I'm not drunk, but I probably had too much to be legal to drive. And I did it because Martin sprung Sebastian on me. I panicked. He and Martin together can be very overbearing.
You haven't told me much about your marriage. When you were getting divorced, you were always so careful to keep it as businesslike as you could. Although his attempts to get his hands on your house must have been devastating.
From habit, she got up to put the kettle on. It was. Fair Acres had been my parents' house, as you know. Sebastian never contributed much to it financially, and yet he made it so I had to pay him off by selling the orchard and that bit that went for a building plot. She paused and smiled as she sat down again. I should have let it go by now, and really I have, but seeing him tonight and him being so awful about... She stopped.
About what? Let me guess, the thought of another man going to live in what had been his home.
Yes, basically. He and Martin were very territorial. I suppose it's different for Martin, but Sebastian has no right to be like that at all.
Has he married again?
He did for a short while, but it didn't last.
Oh well, we won't invite him to our party then.
She laughed. William picked up a pepper grinder that was on the table between them.
You haven't changed your mind? Martin being unhappy about it hasn't made you feel you'd rather I didn't move in?
If I worried about what made Martin happy, I'd never redecorate. Or if I did, I'd have to keep the same colours. He's always had a rather rosy view of what his father was like, but I'm sure he'll come round.
And if he doesn't?
Well, we'll still have the party, and you'll still come and live with me, and I'll still move his old desk to make room for yours.
But you'd be unhappy about it.
It was a statement, not a question. Well, of course I'd prefer it if he gave us his blessing, but if he doesn't, then maybe I have to live with that. She paused. The kettle was boiling. Do you actually want a hot drink of any kind?
Not really,
he said, getting up and going round to her side of the table.
I think we both need an early night.
She smiled and put her arm round his waist as they went upstairs.
End of CD 8. CD 9.
Chapter 35. Helly, darling. It was late the following morning, and Jago and Helena had just arrived back from their time away. Helena found herself enveloped in one of her mother's special hugs, as Jilly intercepted them at the door. Jilly had waved William off a few moments earlier. Everything all right, Mum? She asked. Of course. Come in, Jago. How are you? Are you hungry? What can I get you? Jago kissed Jilly.
It's lovely to see you again, and as always, I'm starving. Breakfast seems a long time ago, and I only had toast.
There are few people I love more than hungry ones, especially when they are always so appreciative, said Jilly. What would you like? Why don't I make you a proper B&B full English? With or without baked beans? Not a fan myself. I've got some black pudding and some homemade hash brown potatoes to go with the usual things.
Oh my goodness, said Jago. That all sounds like heaven.
You could go and eat in the dining room. I've opened the doors to the garden. It's such a lovely day. When Jilly had put plates of food down in front of them, Jago's so full she had to use a side plate for the fried bread and the hash browns. Jilly sat down at the table too. Are you sure that's enough, darling? She said, looking at Helen's bacon and tomato on wholemeal toast. Yes, thank you, Mum. This is just what I fancy. And if I ate all that... She looked at Jago's mountainous plate. I'd have to become a brickie to use up the calories. Well, said Jilly, apparently satisfied by this reply. I'm so glad you're here. I've got something I want to tell you. Panic ripped through Helena like a lightning bolt. Are you all right? Yes, said Jilly, laughing. I'm very all right. It's just... William is going to come and live with me, here at Fairacres. Relief made Helena suddenly weak. God, Mum, why all the drama? That's lovely news. She got up and kissed her mother. Yes, it's great, said Jago. He looked at Helena, who shook her head slightly. She wanted to hear all about her mother before telling her about how she and Jago had come back together again. I'm so pleased you're pleased, said Jilly, sounding relieved and a little surprised. I went to see Martin and Cressida last night. He was not impressed by the thought. Oh, men, said Helena. She made a dismissive gesture with a hand that happened to be holding toast and marmalade. He just wants you to stay being his mum forever and not anyone else's partner. He summoned your father for backup. What? Dad? He's only got the one father, darling. You and he have that in common. But why? Demanded Helena, crunching loudly. For backup. Sebastian wasn't impressed either. He seemed to think he had rights to this house and could say who lived in it. That's outrageous. I do hope you told him where to get off. Jilly seemed a little embarrassed. I think he got my drift. So, what happened? Tell all. More toast, Jago? Mum, don't change the subject. You're hiding something. What went on? Her mother exhaled sharply. I had a bit too much to drink. What? At Martin's house? I didn't think that was possible. I went into the kitchen. Cressida had a bottle open and had a quick glass while I was there. And she allowed that. She was quite sweet about it, actually. She was embarrassed about Martin inviting Sebastian. We shared a moment of solidarity. But what about the rest of it? And so far you've had a glass of very dry sherry. Helena turned to Jago. Martin always gives her very dry sherry. He knows she doesn't like it. But, Mum, you couldn't have got drunk on that. I didn't actually get drunk, darling, although I did have at least 2 glasses of wine at the table. One of them I poured myself, so it was nearly full, but too much to drive. So you got a taxi home? Said Jago. Do you want help picking up your car? I do need help with that, Jago, although, to be honest, I'd forgotten about my car. Did you get a taxi? Asked Helena. Or did Martin or Cressida run you back? No, I left without telling anyone I was going. So you ran away? Asked Helena slowly. Yes, your father was really quite angry. I was a bit... Frightened? He frightened you, bastard, said Helena. You were worried he'd come after you. Only briefly. William was here when I got back. Ulysses the cat jumped onto her lap. So I had Yulie and William to protect me if he had. My father doesn't like cats, Helena explained to Jago. We got a kitten as soon as the house was properly ours. I like cats, said Jago. Remembering how they had met, Helena smiled. So do I. But, Mum, why was William here? Jilly seemed a bit embarrassed. He was passing and he just called in. Helena shook her head. Try again, Mum. I sent him a text while I was in the kitchen at Martin and Cressida's house. Apparently it gave him the impression all was not well. He didn't know where they lived, so he came here. Good for him, said Jago. So you really don't mind if William moves in with me? Said Jilly, who seemed to be a bit obsessed. No, I'm utterly delighted, Mum, said Helena, and went back to kiss her mother again. And if we had a big party to tell the world what we're up to, you'd come? Of course. Try to keep us away, said Jago. Helena felt her mother had relaxed a bit as she and Jago went through the house with her looking at furniture. Jilly had already put stickers on everything she wanted to get rid of. Can we say yes to everything? Said Helena.
There are some nice pieces here, said Jago.
Jilly seemed sceptical. It's just a load of old junk, really, and very battered.
I like battered, said Jago, and I'd like to restore some things.
But do ask Martin, said Helena. I'd hate him to think we'd taken everything. Jilly cleared her throat. I'll ask him. I'm not sure any of this is his and Cressida's style, though. No, but you know what he's like, said Helena. He'll get cross if he isn't asked. Jilly sighed. He will. Are you tired, Mum? You must be. We'll do the car another time. We'll get out of your hair and let you find an escape to the country to sleep in front of. Helena hugged her mother. Don't worry about Martin. He'll come round eventually. But Jilly couldn't relax. After Helena and Jago had gone, Jilly went out through the front door to deadhead her hanging baskets. She was so happy that Helena was completely relaxed about her living with William, but while Martin was upset about it, she couldn't properly relax. She was surprised to see her car parked there. She sighed. Its presence implied that someone, probably Martin and Cressida, had delivered it without coming in to say hello. All her happiness about living with William melted away, leaving her with a feeling of unease. She and Martin had never been as close as she and Helena for all sorts of reasons, but while she didn't always like him, she did love him very much. The thought of him being upset with her was heartbreaking. She'd gone against Martin with regard to selling her house and releasing some capital so they could upgrade. And while she hadn't liked to disappoint him, she knew she was right to stick to her guns and keep the home she loved. But maybe inviting William into that home was going too far. Maybe it was unfair to Martin when he was so against it. And even if Martin was being unfair, she and William were quite happy as they were, or at least happy enough. Or perhaps the elegant townhouse near the shops and restaurants should be considered seriously. Should she throw her lot in with William, sell her home, and share out the money? Even though she made herself think about it, she knew she couldn't do that. But nor could she do something that would make her son so unhappy. Before she could change her mind, she rang William. I can't do this, she said the moment he answered. There was a tiny pause. Can you hold that thought? He said. I'm coming to see you. Could you do that? Suddenly Jilly yearned for the comfort of his arms around her. Don't go anywhere. I'll be with you in half an hour. Jilly was thinking about lunch when William arrived. She couldn't decide between soup or salad or a sandwich and had half made all three, unable to focus because she was so preoccupied with Martin and his feelings about her living with William. She'd always put her children first and felt that was right. But Martin wasn't a child anymore. Was she crazy to put his needs above her own? She got out her phone, tempted to ring Helena and ask her what she thought, but realised it wasn't fair on her. Helena and Martin didn't always get on that well, and she couldn't risk making that worse. Then her phone buzzed in her hand. It was a text from William. Nearly there. Delighted, she put down her phone and ran upstairs to check her makeup and to decide if she was wearing the right thing. She ran down again when she heard his car and was in his arms before he had a chance to get to the door. She felt her tension and anxiety begin to melt away as he held her, and she knew she was in the best place in the whole world. She let him go reluctantly. Can I make you lunch? Have you reached a point of no return with lunch? I'd like to take you out. He smiled a little questioningly. I'd like to take you gliding. Oh, I'd love to go, she said. And no, I can just fling everything back into the fridge, although I'd better find a jumper. You go and find a jumper, and I'll fling everything back in the fridge. As she went back up the stairs, she felt elated, knowing for certain that she wanted him in her life and her home forever. He was already well established in her heart. William did a good job magicking away Jilly's abortive attempts at lunch. Sebastian had never learned where anything went in all the years they were married. She knew it would be very different with William. You look lovely, said William, and even Jilly, who never realised when she was being complimented, couldn't mistake the light of love and desire in his eyes.
Phone.
He handed it to her.
Now let's go gliding, before we get distracted.
Jilly was still nervous about gliding, but once they were up in the clouds, she really did feel she'd left her problems and concerns on the ground. It was another beautiful day, and William had been able to borrow a 2-seater glider at short notice. Apparently, everyone needed accountants, and William did the accounts for most of the gliding club. A couple of phone calls and he had acquired one for the afternoon. He told her all this on the way to the club, not letting her tell him he couldn't move in. They both knew the situation, but William felt Jilly could make the decision better with a clear head.
Gliding was a perfect head clearer, he said.
And so it proved. By the time Jilly had come back down to earth, she had decided that William should move in. But there was still a place in her heart that hurt for her son. "I wonder if Martin will come to our party," said Jilly while William was driving her home.
"We'll ask him, and his wife and daughter, of course, and just see."
William's calm manner added to the calm she had gathered while swooping over the landscape. "I really hope they do decide to come," she said, sounding positive, feeling less so. "But we'll still have fun if they don't." Helena was having tea with Jago the following day when she saw an unknown number calling her. She nearly didn't answer it, but then decided to risk it.
"Helena, William, your mother's friend."
"Of course," said Helena, relieved he wasn't likely to sell her anything.
"I wonder if I could ask your help. Could we meet for a drink this evening? I could meet you anywhere that suits you."
After they had arranged where to meet, she turned to Jago. "That was William. He says he wants my help."
"Ah," said Jago. "I wonder if I know what it is."
"Then tell me. I can't think."
"I imagine it's to do with your brother being unhappy about your mother wanting to live with William in your old home."
Now Helena understood. "Ah, he wants me to try to talk him round."
"I expect so. William won't want Jilly being unhappy about Martin. In theory, he's a grown-up and should just suck it up. But your mum is very maternal. She won't want to do anything that makes him unhappy."
"You're absolutely right, but this is her time. She should have a chance of happiness." Jago shrugged.
"She's very caring."
"Too caring," said Helena, determined to insist that William did move in if that was what her mother wanted. Sitting in a wine bar a few hours later, Helena really understood why her mother loved William. He was kind, a good listener, but not too full on. He was a slow burn rather than instant conflagration. And he obviously cared about Jilly very much.
"I know that however much she says she'll put up with Martin being unhappy, she will be miserable," William said. "However unreasonable Martin is being, she's still affected by it. I'd love to start organising this party with her knowing she has the blessing of both her children.
She does hate it if we fall out, and I know she'll be miserable if she thinks Martin is unhappy about anything she does."
"Exactly."
"And you want me to try to talk Martin round?" He had a very endearing smile.
"Do you think you can?"
Helena shrugged. "I'll certainly try. I think you're absolutely right about Mum. This should be a very happy time for her. I know she likes you, William. She should be allowed to enjoy that and stop being a mum all the time."
"Thank you for being so understanding. You see far more of Jilly than Martin does. Don't you mind about it?"
Helena shook her head. "I was with Mum during the divorce, and before that I saw how vile my dad could be to her. Martin never saw it. I think maybe Dad behaved a bit better when he was around. Whatever, Martin and Dad are quite close. I don't really have much to do with my dad."
"Are you sad about that?"
"I'm sad my dad wasn't different, but I seem to manage okay without one."
"I won't ever be a father to you," said William. "But if you ever need help with anything you need advice about, I'd be more than happy to give it a go."
"That's very kind."
"Oh, please don't ask me anything that involves being fatherly, but I'm good on tax, not too bad on cars, and can find my way round a computer if I have to."
Helena smiled.
I'll bear that in mind. It's a very nice offer. Not at all. I know how much Jilly values your opinion. It's important for me to get on your good side. Now she laughed. You're already on my good side, and I'll see what I can do about Martin. There are some things you may not know. Martin and Cressida tried to set Jilly up with a man. Leo, yes, I know. What they didn't know, nor did Mum, was that he was the man who nearly killed me and Mum in a car when I was a teenager. She fiddled with her hair for a second or two. Then she flung her plait over her shoulder. I don't know if Mum's told you, but I have this weird thing. I can recognise people and remember who they are. I can also do it if only a bit of them is on show, like in a photograph. She sighed. It's not always a great talent to have, to be honest. Jilly did mention it, which makes Martin's dislike of me a bit ironic. I know, and they were dead set on Mum selling her house so she could move into a nasty little annex and look after their daughter. Outrageous. William nodded. Just to be clear, I have a house of my own. I have absolutely no interest in your mother's property. I showed her my house, which is nice and in the very best area. He smiled. She obviously liked it, but I could tell she didn't want to live there. But if she wanted, I would sell it and buy somewhere more rural we could live in together. But she didn't want that either. Not really. But if you sold both properties, you could buy a mansion, said Helena. Martin would really love that, said William, us having exactly the sort of property he wanted. He paused. I don't think Jilly would. No, she wouldn't, said Helena. And you don't mind her having the B&B? Not if it makes her happy, no. For William, it was obviously as simple as that. Chapter 36. Helena arranged to meet Martin near his office after work the next day. It had taken a little persuasion to get him to see her, and he was late. Helena tried not to be annoyed, but he always had thought his time was more precious than hers. But she smiled and got up and kissed him when he appeared. He accepted her hug, but he didn't return it. Helena realised he probably knew why she was there and wasn't happy about it. I think I can guess what this is about, said Martin. Oh? Mum sent you to try to convince me that it's okay to have another man moving in with her, but it's not okay. First, Mum didn't send me. I don't suppose she knows we're meeting. And second, I'm not trying to convince you of anything. This was a small untruth, but she allowed it. Martin wasn't going to change his mind easily, if at all. Oh? Helena flirted with the idea of telling him this meeting was all her idea, but decided life was complicated enough without lying. Well, actually, I am going to try to talk you round to the idea of Mum and William living in the house together. And William asked me. The snake! Trying to get you to do his dirty work? It's not dirty work. They want to be together. William wants you to be happy about it. That's perfectly reasonable, and he's not a snake. He really loves Mum. Mum? Or her very expensive real estate? Helena swallowed hard, shocked that he should mention real estate. After all, he and Cressida had set Jilly up with a man who had tried to persuade her to sell her house. She wondered what kind of kickback they'd offered him. And had they thought through the implications of Leo inviting Jilly to live with him? Bang went their free nanny-cum-gardener. Maybe they'd reckoned his property was so fantastic that Jilly would happily move into it, having sold hers and given them the money, which would at least have got them their new mansion. Although, of course, Jilly didn't want to sell, and he didn't actually own his property. Jilly had explained all this to her. They probably hadn't bargained on him wanting to live in Fairacres when he couldn't convince her to sell. That scuppered all their plans. And would Martin have been happy for Leo to live in his old family home? But now wasn't the time to ask him. She forced down her fury at the way he and Cressida had behaved. She was here as a peacemaker, and it wouldn't help to rake up those things. William has a very nice house of his own. He doesn't need Mum's house. He just wants to live with her, and she wants to live with him. I'm surprised at you, Helena. You're the sentimental one. Aren't you bothered about there being another man in Dad's place? What about respecting the memories?"
"What memories, Martin?" asked Helena softly. "Were there many good ones?"
"Of course there were good ones. Christmas, when we were little and all the cousins came to stay. It was brilliant.
But more recently, I remember some really awful times."
"Like what?"
Martin came back, quick as a flash. "Sunday lunches, when nothing Mum did was right." Helena quailed as she thought about it. He was on at her all the time, had her jumping up and down to fetch this, that and the other, never letting her finish a sentence, interrupting her.
"Oh, for goodness sake, all couples bicker."
"It wasn't bickering, Martin, it was bullying."
"Not as I remember it."
Martin had inherited some of his father's characteristics. Helena had only come to realise this fact as she grew up, although they had got on well when they were small. "Anyway," she said, "we're all grown up now, we have relationships of our own, and Mum wants another chance of happiness. Is that so wrong?"
"Yes, I'm not having another man in Dad's place at home."
Helena opened her mouth to tell him how ridiculous he was being, but remembered again that she was not here to have a row with Martin. She was here to make life happier for her mother. "Well, just think about it, Martin. Mum's a relatively young woman."
"She's a grandmother. She should just concentrate on doing what she does well, not mess about like this. Our family home should be for her family, not for any Tom, Dick or Harry."
"William isn't any of those," said Helena, in a desperate attempt to stop her brother being so angry.
"Oh, don't be ridiculous!"
Martin was shouting now.
"Why can't Mum just be a grandmother and stop all this nonsense? She'd have been perfectly happy and fulfilled if she'd agreed to our plan."
"OK," said Helena quietly. "I'm sorry you feel like this, but I don't think I can do anything about it."
"How did you get on?"
asked Jago when she got home, handing her a glass of wine. "Utter failure. He's in complete denial about Mum. He thinks she should just be a grandmother and not have a life of her own. So unfair." She pulled out a chair at the kitchen table, watching him stir something on the stove.
"You might feel differently about it when you have children yourself,"
said Jago. "You think?" He nodded.
"Yup. I think when you've got a little one, you'll be forever running over to Jilly with your baby."
He tasted something and then threw down the spoon.
"I won't be able to be around all the time during the day. You'll need your mum."
"I'm sure I will, but I hope I won't expect her to sacrifice her entire life for me and my babies." Jago smiled in a way Helena thought was distinctly soppy.
"You want to have lots of babies?"
She was feeling fairly soppy herself just then. "Think so. I'd see how it went after the first."
"So, we'd better get a move on. Get married. It's not essential to be married to have children, of course, but I think your mum might prefer it."
Helena wasn't sure her mother would particularly care,
but she was keen on the getting married idea.
She nodded.
"So, we'd better go ring shopping."
"What a good idea."
"Would tomorrow be too soon?" said Jago. "Tell me if you feel rushed."
"Tomorrow would be perfect." She smiled. "This is a lovely ending to a rather medium day." "It's so kind of you to come over and help with the puddings," said Jilly the following week. Helena hugged her. "It's a tradition, us making puddings together. What are we doing?" Helena had been delighted when Jilly had asked for her help with the announcement lunch she and William were giving. "We'll start with the amaretti cheesecake.
Do take your ring off."
Helena looked at her left hand with a sentimental smile. Her fourth finger was adorned with an antique topaz and diamond ring, which she thought was the most beautiful thing ever.
"I will, but I'll put it in my bra so I don't forget it."
"It's a lovely ring," said Jilly. "Jago wanted to buy me a socking great diamond. It would take years to pay off. His previous fiancée had insisted on one of those. He was surprised and pleased when I just wanted something that I really loved and didn't cost a fortune."
Jilly, who obviously wanted to go on chatting about Helena's love life, was on a mission to get the puddings done too. She handed her daughter an apron.
"He had a bad time with her then?" Yes, when the whole scandal about the fire blew up, she completely lost interest in him. Although, to be fair, it must have been horrible being doorstepped and having your picture all over the papers. Helena reached for a packet of digestive biscuits. Do you want these blitzed, or shall I just bash them? Bash, please. I want the food processor for the amaretti. They're a bit harder. How many are we catering for? Said Helena a little later. About 50, I think. You never quite know, do you? Helena knew she was thinking about Martin and Cressida, and hoping they'd come, although there had been no communication between them since that awful evening. So that's 10 puddings. 5 to a pud? Yes, I'm doing 5 kinds of pudding, but doubling up. You're not over-catering, are you, Mum? This was said with a wry smile, because Helena knew the answer. Probably, but you know what it's like. If people don't see much food, they don't dare eat it. Then there are leftovers, and your classic under-caterer gives even less the next time till it's 1 nibble per person. Helena laughed. Her mother was very good at justifying her tendency to have too much food, but she did agree that everyone enjoyed having at least 2 helpings of something sweet and creamy. Helena was folding mashed raspberries and strawberries into whipped cream when Jilly said, Have you thought about your wedding, Helly? Yes, you can't help it when you're engaged, I've discovered. So, what do you fancy? Helena looked at her mother. What I'd really love, but only if you're absolutely okay with it. Yes? Helena knew that her mother knew what she was going to say. I'd love to have it here, in a marquee in the garden. Simple, not too expensive. Flowers in jam jars, fairy lights in the trees. It sounds lovely, and I'd be thrilled to have it here. I'd be offended if you tried to have it anywhere else. But the fact is, the garden is a bit small. I'm sure it's big enough. Jago hasn't many relatives he still talks to and not so many friends. She paused. Although I suppose there may be some he'd like to get back in touch with, now all the scandal and disruption is well over. What about his parents? Where do they stand in all this? Well, his dad took his brother's side. That's a wicked uncle, so he and Jago don't speak. His mother lives in Australia, I think. She moved as far away as she could from everything. There's his sister, of course. She's a bit bossy, I gather, but they are close. Poor Jago, said Jilly. Yet he seems to manage without having parents. She became thoughtful again, and Helena knew she was thinking about Martin. Helena brought the subject back to the wedding. But you're not doing the catering for my wedding, not even the puddings. I want you and William, to enjoy the wedding and not have to work. Oh, darling, how sweet of you. Jilly suddenly seemed a bit tearful. Helena couldn't tell if this was normal, my little girl is getting married stuff, or because of her wretched brother. But could you restrict your guest list to 50? That's how many we're having tomorrow. We had to leave out lots of people we'd have liked to invite. But you're probably inviting all sorts of friends and family of William's we wouldn't have for the wedding. True, Jilly acknowledged. But I do have a lot of cousins, people I know and am fond of. Helena nodded. This extended family had been very kind and supportive during the divorce. She could see Jilly wouldn't like to leave them off a guest list. But still, the wedding was all a long way off. It was far too early in the proceedings to think about whom they would ask. It's such a shame I had to sell the orchard as well as the building plot, Jilly said. It works okay, doesn't it? Said Helena. The orchard had gone to neighbours who had grazed their children's ponies in it. It did, said Jilly, but the other day I met Natasha at the farmer's market, and she said her son was coming home for a bit and wanted to put yurts on there and offer glamping. Oh. Helena tried to imagine the view outside her old bedroom window, including yurts. Apparently, several of the trees are really old now, so he wants to take them down to make room for the yurts. Natasha seemed a bit embarrassed about it and asked if it would affect my bed and breakfast business. What did you say? She was being served then, so I didn't say anything, but I don't think my normal clients would fancy sleeping in a yurt. Jilly paused. I don't think I can complain, can I? Yurts aren't permanent structures. I don't suppose they need planning permission. Helena resolved to find out. Jago would know. "So, what's the next pudding?" she said. "Would you mind chopping nuts for brownies?" "No, but could you make another recipe, one that doesn't involve nuts, less work?" "I think it's better to make the recipe I know best," said Jilly. Then Helena remembered. Her mother used to make those brownies to send to Martin at university. He loved them. She concentrated on her chopping for a while and then suggested they put on some music. There was so much unsaid between them, it would be good to fill the silence. After lunch, they went to look at the marquee. "It looks amazing," said Helena. "So big. We could have a wedding here easily, surely." Jilly shook her head. "No, I promise you, this only takes 50. You'd need something bigger, unless you leave off most of your relations and half your friends." "Couldn't you fit a bigger one in here?" asked Helena. "Not really," said Jilly. Helena sighed. "Well, we don't need to worry about my wedding just yet." "No," Jilly agreed. "But this marquee definitely needs flowers. A few big arrangements, I think. And then tomorrow I'll put posies on the tables. Let's get cutting." As they clipped and snipped in the garden, getting enough material to fill the big stone crocks Jilly wanted to stand in the empty spaces, Jilly said, "Do you remember when me and other parents got together to turn the school hall into a summery bower for a play?" "Oh, yes. A cut-down version of A Midsummer Night's Dream. I was Titania because I had the longest hair. You looked lovely. And so did the hall. It did involve hacking down whole branches of leaves and every flower in the garden, and every garden in the village, practically." Jilly smiled, obviously thinking back to her days as a young mother with fondness. "Of course we had the orchard then, so I had extra trees I could use, but it still wasn't enough. So a group of us mums went into the churchyard and started raiding that. We were terrified someone would come along and tell us off, but it looked so pretty." "There are photos somewhere," said Helena. "I remember." "We carried lots of it into the church afterwards, so as not to waste all that work, and because we felt guilty about the churchyard ivy being torn off in strips. I was worried about decorating the church at Christmas without it, but it grew back okay, and the churchyard always had wonderful holly." Jilly fell silent. "OK, Mum," said Helena, thinking her mother's reminiscence had gone on just a bit too long. "Let's finish up here. I want to see your outfit for tomorrow. Did you buy a hat, or just a dress?" "Oh, I didn't buy anything new. I've got lots of clothes." "Mum, this is a party that your lovely new man is giving, so his family can meet you properly, and so our lot can meet him. And you haven't bought something new to wear?" She glanced at her watch. "It's too late now." "We could always pop down to the supermarket," said Jilly. "Get something from there." Helena tutted and shook her head before putting her arm round her mother and leading her into the house. "You look lovely in this," said Helena, pulling out a dress that brought out the colour of her mother's eyes. "Yes, but I wore it when I went out with Leo. It reminds me of him. In fact, I'll have to move it on." "Oh, seems a shame." But Helena did understand. "Maybe keep it, but just not wear it tomorrow?" "OK, I'll keep it. So what else have we got? What about this?" Helena shook her head and tried to pick her words. "No, too mumsy. OK, definitely get rid of that then. Shall I find a bag?" "Look in the top shelf. I keep them there." Eventually, they created an outfit they both liked and which didn't have any bad connotations. It was a long, finely pleated skirt that Jilly had bought in a charity shop years ago because she loved it and had now come back into fashion. And a fitted wrap top. That, Helena declared, made her waist look tiny. "And your big locket on the black velvet ribbon," said Helena. "Now, let's arrange a wash and blow dry." "Too short notice," said Jilly, running her fingers through her hair out of sight of the mirror. "I'm going to ring Debbie. I know she'll sort you out. She never lets you down. It's not really fair." "I'll ring her," said Helena firmly. "She'll probably fit you in really early tomorrow, so you'll have plenty of time to get ready. And what about your makeup? I'll do my own makeup. Jilly seemed a bit panicked at the thought of someone else putting makeup on her. You know what those makeup artists are like. They always want you to look natural. The last thing I want.
Helena laughed. I do remember that time we went to the health farm and everyone had makeovers.
They all looked amazing and I looked awful, said Jilly. I couldn't understand why it didn't work on me.
They looked natural, said Helena.
So did I, said Jilly, which was why I hated it. Now, glass of wine? Supper? Why don't you ring Jago and ask him to join us? Actually, I've got a few things I must do, but I'll come early tomorrow, at about 11, just to help you with the flowers for the tables and anything else you may be panicking about. Which will be everything. Supposing William doesn't turn up? He'll turn up. He adores you.
When Helena was driving away, she reflected it wasn't William not turning up that was worrying her mum. It was Martin. And he wouldn't turn up, not if he was still feeling angry and resentful. She had a few phone calls to make, she realised, before she could relax and sort out what she was wearing for the lunch the following day.
Chapter 37. It's so kind of you to see me so early, said Jilly to her hairdresser as she was handed a cup of tea. I should have sorted it out sooner, but I got distracted. That's okay, said Debbie. I don't mind an early start. Working from home means I'm here. Aren't you lucky with the weather? I know. We had made provision for it being cold and rainy, but I don't think we'll need the heaters. These days all the seasons are unpredictable, said Debbie. So just a wash and blow dry? Please. Jilly settled back to enjoy the blissful experience of having her hair washed. I couldn't drop off last night, and of course went into a deep sleep at about 5:30. Oh, I hate that. But you feel all right now? Jilly nodded as Debbie's skillful hands rubbed away her tension. I'm fine. You know, when people say fine, they always mean the exact opposite. Jilly laughed. No, I really am fine. She crossed her fingers under her robe. While she longed to confide in Debbie and knew she'd be wise and non-judgmental, she felt that not talking about Martin's refusal to accept William made it less real. Besides, there was nothing she could do about it today. So, tell me about William then, said Debbie, when Jilly had moved from the wash basin and was in front of the mirror. He's lovely. Sort of quiet, but exciting enough for me. What do you mean? Or shouldn't I ask? Jilly was perfecting her I'm totally happy laugh, and executed one now. I mean, he took me gliding, and I loved it. Debbie was suitably impressed. Wow, Jilly. She hesitated. Should I just take a bit off the back? It seems a bit heavy. Jilly liked the effect her new enthusiasm for gliding had on people. She briefly considered buying a set of motorbike leathers and telling everyone she had a Harley. Her reputation as a nice lady would finally be in pieces. Feeling better for having her hair done, when Jilly arrived home, she went out to meet the caterers who had arrived while she'd been away. Franco, from the Italian wine bar near William's house, who was in charge, was delightfully Italian, full of compliments and charming comments on the surroundings. Once she had been reassured that everything that should be served hot would be, and the cold things would be cold and not room temperature, she allowed herself to be taken to see the contents of Franco's special van. There were platters of charcuterie, so finely cut you could probably read through it. Plates of stuffed artichokes like little roses, finely sliced courgettes formed into cylinders and filled with, Franco told her, pine nuts and breadcrumbs, parmesan and thyme. Salvers of stuffed courgette flowers, almost too pretty to eat, and comforting troughs of aubergine parmigiana, lasagna, and something Jilly couldn't identify but looked delicious. Everything will be served just as it should be, said Franco. Our waiters will fill glasses, provide water and soft drinks. Everything will be perfect. I'm so happy, said Jilly. We are doing our best for William, said Franco. He is a good man. There were also bowls of salad, and piles of roasted asparagus. Enough vegan and healthy options to please even Cressida, should she happen to come. "It all looks amazing," Jilly said. "Thank you so much." "As I said, it is for William. He once helped us when we were in trouble. And now he has a beautiful companion. We want to do our best for her too." He took this opportunity to kiss her hand. As she went back into the house, she was blushing and chiding herself for being flattered. Franco probably said that to all the girls, she told herself. Now, to see to the flowers for the tables. As she went round her garden, secateurs and bucket of water in hand, followed by Ulysses, who was grumpy because he'd been thrown out of the catering van several times, she realised she was excited. Mostly she was looking forward to seeing William. He had rung her while she was in bed, and it had been lovely talking to him. Sadly, one of the things he had said was that he wouldn't be able to get to the house until just before the party. But that was okay, as she was used to dealing with these things on her own. As she went round, snipping and stripping off excess leaves, she fought the cold little bit of her heart that reminded her Martin was unhappy. But she wouldn't have behaved differently, she realised. She was just as entitled to happiness as he was. He would get over it. He was an adult, and he would eventually realise she was allowed to be happy with another man. She left the flowers in her favourite dark shed to soak up as much water as they could. She was aware she should have picked them the previous evening, and then went up to have a shower. She would get ready after Helena had come and helped her arrange the flowers. A shower using her favourite honey-scented soap cheered her, and she pulled on some old and comfortable clothes, which were also soothing. The outfit she and Helena had chosen the previous day was hanging outside the wardrobe. She didn't dare look at it too closely, in case she changed her mind and had to go through the whole process again. She remembered Helena's surprise that she hadn't wanted to buy anything new. This made her laugh. Helena was notoriously reluctant to buy new clothes herself. She had finished doing her makeup when Helena arrived. "Are you up there? I'm here to do the flowers." She ran up the stairs. "Oh, jeans and an old linen shirt. I thought we'd sorted out your outfit yesterday. Your hair's looking good, though." "Thanks, but I'm not going to do the flowers in my glad rags. Let's have a cup of coffee and get these flowers done. Time is moving on." When there were flowers on every table, and the large arrangements had been tweaked, not everything looked as perky as it should have done. Helena and Jilly looked around them. "Oh, this is exactly what I'd love for my wedding," said Helena. "Yes, but it'd only work if you just want something very small," Jilly reminded her patiently. A split second later, Helena said, "I think something a bit bigger would be lovely, as long as it can be here, like this. But we'll squash it into the garden somehow." When Jilly went up to dress, she realised that Helena wasn't particularly bothered about having a big wedding, but that she wanted her mother to have what she wanted for her daughter. She was touched, and knew she was very lucky that they got on so well. They were bound together by adversity, she decided, and that was why she and Martin weren't as bonded. As Jilly was tweaking her hair and worrying about her earrings, she was aware of feeling anxious, stage fright probably, and then she heard the front door creak. She went to the top of the stairs and listened. It could be the one bed and breakfast guest she hadn't managed to cancel, or one of Franco's staff members. It was unlikely to be a burglar, but she thought she should go down and check. She was halfway down the stairs when she saw a man with his back to her looking at the visitor's book. On the bottom step, she realised it wasn't a burglar. It was worse. It was Leo. He turned as he heard her, and she realised when she saw him properly that he was very drunk. She took a breath. She would have to play this very carefully. "I heard you were having a party," he said. "Yes, but I didn't invite you, Leo." "No, you didn't. That's because you're having it with your new fancy man." "His name is William," she said calmly, lowering her voice, hoping it would encourage him to lower his. "I know what his name is. He's your accountant. And does he know that you must have been keeping us both on a string at the same time?" "It wasn't like that, Leo, And now could you please leave?
No. You may think you can have everything you want, but you can't.
I can have who I like in my house, and I don't want you in it, so please leave.
Is it your house, though? Or is it your children's heritage?
You're drunk, Leo. You're not making sense. He was giving her information about how he got to know about the party, though. Martin must have told him for some reason. Possibly spite.
Oh, I am making sense. I'm just not quite as clever about life as you are, am I? You saw the main chance and you took it. You decided shacking up with your boring accountant was a better bet than I was. Women don't reject me, sweetheart. I reject them.
He started to walk towards her. Chilly was beginning to feel really frightened now. It was early. No one who was likely to come into the house was due yet, and William said he might not be able to arrive until just before the guests were due. Leo was so menacing, angry, resentful. The thought that he might try to rape her crossed her mind. She didn't let it linger. She was a relatively fit woman, and she could either fight him off or escape. She backed away, edging towards the sitting room door. The French windows were open. If she got into the sitting room, she could get outside.
You're a little slut. Do you know that?
He said, still walking towards her. His hand shot out just before she reached the door, and his fingers gripped her shoulder. She shut her eyes, not wanting to see his face approaching hers. Her mouth went dry, and her brain stopped functioning. Then suddenly, he was pulled away. There was a crunching noise and a crash. Her eyes flew open to see Leo sprawling on his back on the floor.
Now, get out,
said William. He went to Leo and helped him get up from the floor.
Oh, God, he's drunk. He can't drive.
I'll ring Helena, said Jilly. I'm sure Jago will help if he can. Taxis aren't keen on taking drunk people.
Perfectly fine,
said Leo. Furious, but clearly more in control of himself now. I'll make him some coffee, said Jilly, glad to have an excuse to leave the scene. Once in the kitchen, she found her phone and called Helena. Darling, is Jago there? Leo came round here and is drunk. We need to get him out of here urgently. She paused. William hit him. Oh, my God, said Helena, extremely impressed. I'll call Jago. He's just in the shower, but he can come out. A very short time later, Jago said,
Hello, Jilly? What can I do for you?
You couldn't come and pick up Leo and take him home? I know William would do it, but between us, I'd rather it was someone young and fit like you. Also, it won't matter if you're a bit late to the party.
On my way, no worries.
Helena came back on the phone. He's so kind, said Jilly. I must make him a cake or something. Don't worry, Mum, said Helena. He loves helping people. Mind you, he also loves cake. Jilly made a strong cup of instant coffee and took it out to the hall. Leo was sitting in the hall chair while William stood over him. Here's some coffee. You'd better drink it, Leo, she said.
I'll take him home, said William.
No need, said Jilly quickly. Jago is on his way. She suddenly felt weak and shaky. She went back to the kitchen quickly so she could sit down and breathe deeply. She realised now what a narrow escape she'd had. Thank goodness William had been earlier than he'd said he'd be. It took her a little while before she felt herself again. At last, she heard sounds that meant Jago had arrived. A few moments later, William came into the kitchen. Jilly got up and fell into his arms. Oh, God, thank you so much for rescuing me. I felt so vulnerable. She had a horrid feeling she was going to cry, which she really didn't want to do, as she'd made such a good job of her makeup.
Darling, of course I'd rescue you. If I didn't, or couldn't, there would be no point in my being in your life, he said, holding her and murmuring into her hair. I'd go through fire for you. He paused. Although I must say, punching someone hurts so much more than I ever thought it could.
Jilly instantly went into caring mode. Oh, William, come with me to the downstairs loo. I've got some arnica and plasters and things.
I'm not sure I need a plaster.
If you've broken a finger, I'll have to stick it to the next finger.
I'm sure I haven't broken anything, said William, following Jilly.
Let me just have a look.
He allowed her to put arnica on it, and they were still crammed together in the tiny bathroom when he said,
Is there time for me to have a cup of coffee before the guests arrive?
Of course. You arrived early. Thank goodness.
I know, I'm so glad. My errand took less time than I allowed for it.
Jilly found her curiosity piqued.
Was it anything exciting?
Hardly, said William. I'm a boring accountant.
She laughed, all her fear dissipated.
Boring accountants are absolutely my favourite kind,
she said, and kissed him.
Helena found them in there.
Is this the party venue? Sorry, didn't get the email.
Jilly laughed, beyond embarrassment.
No, there's no room for the band in here.
Now Helena really did look confused.
You're having a band?
No, figure of speech, said Jilly.
Now, let's get this party started. Woo!
Mum, said Helena, now you're scaring me.
And me, said William. A quick cup of coffee and we'll be ready to greet our guests.
Jilly glanced at her watch.
I think we need to open a bottle of something.
Oh, me too, said Helena.
I'll do it.
She took a bottle of champagne out of the fridge, one of a few Jilly had hidden in there for later. When she'd dealt with a bottle and handed everyone a glass of champagne, she said,
I want to hear all about William decking Leo. I so wish I'd seen it.
I'm afraid I had my eyes shut, Jilly admitted.
Just as well. It was very inelegant. Not at all like it is on telly, said William. If Leo hadn't been drunk and off balance, he'd never have fallen over.
Jilly realised William wanted to make light of it, so didn't point out that Leo had been gripping onto her very hard. So in spite of being drunk, he wasn't off balance. It must have been quite a punch.
What would you have done if he'd stayed standing, William?
Asked Helena.
Punched him again. But I'm very glad I didn't have to. My hand hurts quite enough.
Jago walked into the kitchen.
Has the party started without me?
Not really,
said Jilly.
But thank you so much for getting rid of Leo for us.
It was a pleasure, said Jago.
Are you wearing that for the party?
Asked Helena. Jago was wearing jeans with ripped knees and a band t-shirt that he probably used for sleeping in. He looked down at himself.
Oh, I see what you mean. Should I go home and put on my suit?
I think you look absolutely fine,
said Jilly firmly. Don't go anywhere.
Totes agree, said William seriously. Isn't that what the young people say?
Helena closed her eyes, shook her head, and took another sip of champagne. But she was smiling.
Oh, are we late?
Said a voice. It was Amy, and she had James with her.
I thought I was early,
Amy went on.
I came in case you needed any help.
She pulled James forward.
You said I could bring a +1,
she said shyly.
This is James.
How lovely, said Jilly.
It's so cool you're still friends,
said Helena. She gave them both a hug.
Don't get overexcited,
said Amy, after there'd been quite a lot of hugging and arm-punching.
It's very early days.
Jilly and Helena exchanged glances. They'd heard those words before.
I think you both need a glass of champagne, said Jilly.
Not that we're celebrating.
Chapter 38. The party was due to start, and Jilly and William were waiting in the marquee, welcoming smiles at the ready. Are you all right, Mum? Asked Helena.
Yes, I just want to get started. I've got stage fright, she said.
Aunt Daphne and the others will be here any minute, said William. I had a text to say they were nearly here. I almost regret teaching her texting. She can't seem to stop. It's like a sort of Tourette's. It all looks great, said Jago, looking round the marquee. I'd like this for our wedding hells. If you'd like it.
Just what I want, said Helena.
It's so good we agree. Ah, here they are, said William. Oh my God, said Jago. I think I'm scared.
All William's aunts, and apparently several other people, had decided to wear hats. They looked magnificent, but, Gilly thought, a bit overdressed for what was basically a buffet in a tent. There were chairs and tables for everyone to sit at, but it was supposed to be a very informal occasion. This phalanx of women looked ready for Ladies' Day at Ascot, or the wedding of a minor royal. "People love the chance to dress up," said Gilly, moving forward. "Daphne, how lovely to see you, and I adore your hat."
"Not hat, hatinator,"
Daphne corrected her, kissing her cheek.
"Not to be confused with a fascinator."
"You've obviously looked into it," said Gilly.
"Of course."
Daphne turned her attention to Helena.
"My, you're a pretty girl, aren't you?"
Gilly looked at her daughter through a stranger's eyes. She had tongued her long hair, so it came over her shoulder in ordered curls. She wore a simple dress, an old favourite, and ballet flats. She was wearing mascara and a bit of lipstick, and looked, to Gilly's entirely biased eyes, beautiful. And at her side was Jago, who, although he wasn't wearing his suit, looked kind and handsome, and just the man she would have chosen for her daughter, if the matter had anything to do with her. Gilly appreciated him deeply for being who he was. She'd have loved him if he'd been wearing budgie smugglers and a snorkel to her party. Daphne patted Gilly's arm.
"Lovely young couple, darling. You're so lucky."
"Yes, I am," said Gilly, feeling lucky until her son came into her mind, and she felt just a little bit sad. "Now, where are you going to sit?"
"Isn't there a seating plan?"
Daphne was put out by this basic mistake. "Well, no, we thought people would just—"
"Don't worry about it, darling. I'll organise it."
Daphne clapped her hands.
"People, follow me."
Other guests began to arrive, and the enclave of hat-wearing aunties was less prominent. But they still looked like a flock of exotic parakeets on an English bird table. William and Gilly found they couldn't go and sit down themselves for a while. So many people wanted to congratulate them, which, Gilly realised, was really a chance for one set of friends to get a look at their friend's chosen partner. Gilly was glad to see the chaps from the gliding club, whom she knew.
"You're looking very lovely, my dear," said one. "We're all so pleased that William has found the right girl at last, one who can join in with his hobby and not resent it. And you won't regret your choice either. Salt of the earth is our William."
"I'm sure I won't," said Gilly, smiling happily. "He's perfect."
"Not sure I'm perfect, darling," said William, overhearing. "I don't wash up very thoroughly."
"It's okay," said Gilly, preparing to greet the next guest. "I have a dishwasher." People had mostly gone to the buffet and sat down again. The waiters had filled glasses, fetched water, and made sure that Daphne's little crew got cups of tea. William looked at Gilly.
"Time for a quick speech."
"Do we have to?"
"Just a very short one," said William. "I think we should."
"But you haven't got any food yet," said Jago. "I'll get you both some. If you go, you'll never get back to your seats." Gilly didn't want William to make a speech just yet, and she was glad to be presented with a plate of delicious food by Jago. It put off the moment when, basically, she had to give up hope. Although she couldn't really eat the food, she played around with it. She had just put a pepper stuffed with goat's cheese, and it transpired a bit of chili, into her mouth, when she saw some movement by the entrance of the marquee. It was Martin, Cressida, and Ismene. Martin was wearing a suit. Cressida was wearing a very bodycon gunmetal dress with a fascinator to match. And Gilly's only granddaughter was dressed in the kind of smocked dress Gilly would have refused to wear when she was a child. She thought her heart would overflow with happiness. Izzy waved at her. Gilly waved back. Martin and Cressida made their way across the marquee, through the people who still hadn't sat down with their plates of food.
"Sorry we're late, Mum," said Martin. "There was a lot of traffic."
He only met her eyes for a second or two, but that was enough. He was here. Gilly swallowed back tears of joy. "That top looks lovely on you," said Cressida. "It brings out the colour of your eyes." "You look lovely too," said Jilly, "but then you always do." "Are there chocolate brownies, Jilly?" asked her granddaughter. "Yes, I did them specially for you, but they're in the kitchen, in the tin. I didn't want everyone to have them." The little girl sighed. "Thank you. Mummy says I can eat whatever I like today."
"William,"
said Martin with a nod.
"Martin,"
said William. "We'd better find somewhere to sit," said Cressida, "and get something to eat." "There are some lovely salads," said Jilly. "I know," said Cressida. She smiled, really quite warmly. It was like being smiled at by a glacier, a bit unnerving. "We can do the speeches now," said Jilly happily, when she'd seen Martin and Cressida find seats. Izzy had gone into the house, probably to find the chocolate brownies. Jilly had made them in the vain hope she would get to eat them, and now she was.
"Will you go first?" said William.
"Are you making a speech, Mum?"
Helena sounded surprised. Jilly hadn't planned one before, but now she got to her feet.
"It's my house. I should welcome our guests."
William tinged a glass. The conversation died away.
"Hello, everyone," she said. "I won't keep you long. I just want to welcome you and thank you for coming. This party is just a bit of a celebration, and it's lovely to have you all here with us." She took a sip of champagne. "In case you're wondering what we're celebrating exactly, well, it's that gliding has become my hobby."
There were cheers from the gliding club contingent.
As that may seem a bit surprising to most of you, as it was a surprise to me, we thought we should mark it with a party. Now, I think William wants to say something.
William got up. "Strangely, although I am delighted Jilly has taken to gliding, I think we're here to celebrate something slightly different, although no less momentous."
"Did we go to the church service? I can't remember," said one of William's aunts.
"William and Jilly are very modern,"
said Daphne in a stage whisper.
"I don't think they're getting married."
"Oh, that's very sad," said the first aunt. "I wouldn't have worn a hat if I'd known. I bought it specially."
William cleared his throat loudly. "Just to set your minds at rest, beloved aunts and honorary aunts, I do have a ring in my pocket."
Jilly gasped. Somehow, with everything else she had on her mind, this hadn't occurred to her.
"Although I had intended to ask Jilly if she would do me the honour of becoming my wife in private,"
he leaned in and whispered in her ear. "I'm so sorry. Just say yes now for the sake of the aunts. I'll get Daphne to explain later if you don't want to marry me." "It's all right, William. I do want to marry you," Jilly whispered back, having just realised it was true.
Assuming Jilly's answer had been positive, the aunts began chanting, "Show the ring! Show the ring!" "Oh, go on, William," said Jilly. "Show them the ring." "I'll show it to you first."
It was a large sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds.
"I can change it if you don't like it."
"It's lovely," said Jilly, holding out her ring finger. "Put it on."
"I've got another present, but I insist on giving you that in private."
Jilly held out her hand and everyone admired the ring. People flocked around them, congratulating them, admiring the rock on Jilly's hand, telling William what a lucky man he was. Martin came up.
"I'm happy for you, Mum. Cressida made me see this is your home now and not the family's. And I'm sorry for trying to get you to sell it. And introducing you to Leo. I didn't realise he was such bad news."
Jilly kissed him. "It's all right. I'm just so glad to see you." He patted her shoulder awkwardly and went back to his family.
"Come on," said William. "I can't wait to talk to you alone." The kitchen was full of Ismini eating chocolate brownies, and the sitting room had an aunt lying flat out on the sofa, hat askew, snoring gently.
Eventually, they went into the tiny office where Ulysses had been having a nap. Now he'd been woken, he stalked off to join the party, scattering hair as he went. Jilly was dying of curiosity and anxiety in case William had bought her something she didn't really want. Would she be brave enough to tell him so it could be sent back? He pulled an envelope out of his inside pocket. It was a holiday, she decided. That was okay. He handed her the envelope. "I've been talking to your neighbour and her son," he said. "They were willing to sell this." Bewildered, she opened it. It took her a few moments to take in what she was reading. "The orchard," she said a little breathlessly. "You've bought the orchard. Oh, William, I never dreamed this could happen." "It's for you. It's a present." Jilly wasn't worried about the details. She just wanted to hug him. So she did. "Oh, thank you so much, William. Now we can have a proper wedding." That is the end of A Springtime Affair. It was written by Katie Ford and read by Helen Stern. This has been an ISIS audio presentation. Previous titles by this author, Life Skills, Living Dangerously, Stately Pursuits, are also available from ISIS. For further details of our extensive catalogue of unabridged audiobooks, please call 0116 236 4325 or visit our website www.ulverscroft.com.